Chapter 497. Swoosh. His spiritual perception turned into his body and appeared in the heavenly book territory. The battle energy around him quickly surged out and formed a golden pool. The key of the heavenly book also slowly appeared and rotated slowly in the distance. It was still mocking Lin Muyu, the loser who kept fighting after losing. One more time, don't rush. Lin Muyu comforted his repeatedly injured heart and began to increase his aura to find the feeling just now. He increased his battle energy to about 318% and suddenly leaped forward. Whoosh! The strong wind flew past his ears and the key of the heavenly book was getting closer and closer. Just as he was about to touch it, the things in front of him suddenly stretched out a lot, but they were still within his control. Just as Lin Muyu was about to reach out, the surrounding scenery stretched out again. Suddenly, the key of the heavenly book appeared nearly 50 meters away. Suddenly, a million curses ran through Lin Muyu's heart. The setting was too abnormal. He exited the heavenly book territory in disappointment and took a deep breath. Did he really have to be accurate to the last 2 decimal places to get the key of the heavenly book? A sense of frustration lingered in his heart. It was not that he did not want to work hard, but with his current cultivation, his control of power had not reached perfection. He could not sensitively capture 0.001% of power. At this moment, Lulu and Ehai suddenly spoke. Brother, do you still remember the 5% divine power that the 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor gave you? Lulu remembered that the 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor's control of power was not just 1%, he could even achieve 0.01%. Therefore, Lulu judged that a godly state master's control of power must be above 0.01%. However, the 5% divine power of the 7 Luminaries Demon Emperor is too weak and not enough for you to achieve all this. Why don't you refine a Godhead fragment and see if you can integrate more divine power into it? Lin Muyu's heart lit up. Lulu's reminder was too timely. He was overjoyed and said, "Okay, I'll try." Yes. He took out one of the 2 Godhead shards from his cosmos sack. This shard was glowing with a fiery red light, just like a gemstone. However, how could a mortal see through the power contained within it? What? Summoning her cauldron, Lin Muyu surrounded it with starfire as she tossed out the Godhead shard. Instantly, the fiery red shard let out a buzzing sound as if it was resisting the Godhead shard. Lin Muyu held the star sword with both hands and stood in the treasure refining cauldron. Her eyes were closed and her cloak fluttered in the strong wind. No, the resistance from the Godhead fragment is getting stronger and stronger. It seems that the treasure refining cauldron can't control this kind of divine power at all. Damn it. Gritting her teeth, Lin Muyu summoned the God-binding chains and the 7 Luminaries' holy gourd at the same time. She infused her dark force into the cauldron to suppress the energy contained in the Godhead fragment. Wung. The flames became more and more intense and the whole treasure refining cauldron trembled. Lin Muyu closed her eyes and continued to use her king's fighting flame to strengthen the power in the treasure refining cauldron. She tried to increase the temperature of the Godhead fragment. To refine a fire attribute Godhead fragment, she must have a higher temperature and stronger power. After all, the law of the world was to bully the weak. If the opponent was not as strong as the opponent, there was no need to talk about refining it. However, the power in the Godhead fragment was very strong, and it continued to fight against the treasure refining cauldron. After 6 hours, the sky was already dark, but the Godhead fragment was still not refined. Instead, a layer of spiritual energy on the surface of the Godhead fragment was slowly peeling off. Immediately, Lin Muyu was secretly delighted. Is she going to succeed? But at this moment, a figure slowly gathered in the flames. It was a white-bearded elder with a ruthless expression. He roared angrily, "Little bastard, you want to usurp this godly monarch's power with just you?" Then the old man swung his palm at Lin Muyu, and the flames surged up to the sky. Heavens, this is also a Godhead fragment of a God King, a middle god. Lin Muyu groaned inwardly. There was no turning back now, so she had no choice but to fight it head-on. She raised her arm and pushed out the power of the 6 Luminaries' heavenly tribulation. Boom! The power of both sides surged and there was a loud boom. The treasure refining cauldron finally could not withstand the power of heaven and earth, and it suddenly exploded. The flames swept out in all directions, destroying all the pavilions and waterside pavilions around the courtyard. It was a terrifying sight to behold. Ah! Lin Muyu spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered a few steps back. She was in a sorry state and she was already seriously injured. The Godhead fragment slowly fell to the ground with a ding, but the energy on its surface had already begun to dissipate. Holy shit, It looks like the moment the Godhead King unleashed his will inside the Godhead fragment to attack, it also destroyed the Godhead fragment's defense. It's time to refine it again. Enduring the pain, Lin Muyu stood up again and held the cosmic sword. With a thought, the treasure-refining cauldron reformed. It was also at this time that Wei Chao's voice came from outside. "Master, what's wrong?" "It's nothing. Stand guard outside and don't let anyone get close to me." "Yes." The Godhead fragment sizzled in the treasure-refining cauldron. It was burned red, but it still seemed to be struggling to resist the refinement. The flames on both sides surged and fought against each other. The Godhead fragment's ferocious look appeared again. His face was a little pale, but he controlled the flames with both hands and laughed loudly. "What, you still want to test your God King Grandpa's invincible divine power? Come, I'll let you know how the word death is written." "Motherf asterisk cur." Lin Muyu cursed loudly. "Motherf asterisk cur." The Godhead fragment was even more furious. As he cursed, he exerted all his strength to counterattack Lin Muyu. At this time, the Fushi's heavenly book on the broken stone block behind Lin Muyu suddenly shone brightly. It rustled and flipped through the golden pages as if it was reacting. Could it be that it was attracted by the power in the Godhead fragment? Lin Muyu was a little stunned. He freed his hand and pressed it on the Fushi's heavenly book that was flipping through the pages. Swoosh! A milky white divine power gathered on the heavenly book and flowed into Lin Muyu's palm. Lin Muyu's body trembled. How could a mortal withstand such a mighty divine power? He quickly pulled his hand away, but the divine power from the Fushi's heavenly book had already flowed into his palm. A few seconds later, as if sensing the divine power from the heavenly book entering his body, another divine power in his body surged and fought back. It was the divine power left behind by the 7 luminaries' demon emperor. The two divine powers immediately fought against each other with Lin Muyu's body as the battlefield, neither giving way to the other. At that moment Lin Muyu wanted to die. He growled, "Are you kidding me? I'm about to be counterattacked by the Godhead fragment, and you guys are still fighting?" Suddenly the two divine powers seemed to feel guilty. One flowed into his left hand and the other into his right hand, and they fought together. Lin Muyu pushed both of his palms out at the same time. He growled, "Melt?" "What?" The divine king's body trembled. His strength was immediately suppressed. His face was filled with horror. "You little brat, who are you? I can't accept this." The heavenly book's divine power, the 7 luminaries' demon emperor's divine power, the 7 glorious stars' transformation. The 3 powerful divine powers merged together and crashed into the Godhead fragment in the cauldron. Instantly, the divine king's body began to crumble. Even though he was a divine king, the Godhead fragment only contained less than 10% of his divine power. On the other hand, Lin Muyu's attack contained the 7 luminaries' demon emperor's dark force and the heavenly book's dark force. How could a mere Godhead fragment withstand it? Bang! The Godhead fragment officially shattered. Countless divine powers turned into fiery red starlight that danced in the air inside the cauldron. This was a great opportunity to refine it. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and quickly absorbed the rich divine powers. One by one, the starlight seeped into his skin and slowly merged with his blood vessels. This was the mystical ability of the cauldron. It could directly assimilate other people's divine powers into its own, eliminating the need for fusion. As the third divine power entered his body, Lin Muyu couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, the cauldron shone brightly and began to refine the dark force in his chi-si. This fellow's heart was evil. The heavenly book's divine power and the 7 luminaries' demon emperor's divine power had just helped him, and now he wanted to kill him. In an instant, before the 3 divine powers could resist, they were completely refined by Lin Muyu's mighty power. Wisps of divine power gathered in his chi-si and became a different kind of power from the king's fighting flame. This power was cultivated from Lin Muyu's heart and soul. The power was very clear and very pure. Suddenly, a comfortable feeling spread through his body. This new divine power was quickly healing the damage caused by the 7 glorious stars' transformation. This was a divine power that was filled with the power to restore life. Lin Muyu was pleasantly surprised. At the same time, this divine power also contained the shocking flame force and the vigorous destructive power of the 7 luminaries. It seemed to have combined the strengths of the 3 divine powers. Ha ha. In the night sky, Lin Muyu laughed heartily. This time his power had really improved by leaps and bounds. Thanks to this quintessence fragment, the intensity of his king's fighting flame had increased by a lot. He had already stepped into the realm of initial success of the divine legacy realm. At the same time, Lin Muyu named this divine power Fuxi Divine Power. After all, it was thanks to this divine power contained in the heavenly book that he could refine the quintessence fragment. It was also at this moment, when his qi sank into his dantian, he could see every little ripple in his sea of qi and sea of will. Even the slightest ripple in his sea of qi couldn't escape his perception. This could only prove one thing: his control over his strength had deepened by another level. "Lulu, come out." The beautiful female elf official flew out and said with a smile, "Congratulations on obtaining Fuxi Divine Power, big brother. This wisp of divine power is much stronger than the 5% divine power left behind by the Demon Emperor." Yes. Lin Muyu was well aware that although the strength of this Fuxi Divine Power was not as strong as the fundamental power of the king's fighting flame, it was enough to be used in actual combat. After all, the purity of divine power was incomparable to the king's fighting flame. Continue power test. Chapter 498. 3181%. 3182%. 3183%. Lulu kept reporting Lin Muyu's power coefficient. When it reached 3183%, she stopped and smiled. "This is the power. Brother, feel it?" "Okay." Lin Muyu closed his eyes. After cultivating Fuxi's divine power, his sea of will and sea of qi were refined and his sensitivity was greatly improved. Now, he could easily sense the degree of a certain level of power and easily control the subtle fluctuations of power. This was indeed incomparable to his previous cultivation. He was secretly delighted. This time, the key of the heavenly book would not be able to escape his grasp, right? He called Lulu back and began his attempt. When his palm covered the heavenly book actually emitted a power that came from the source. It was as if Lin Muyu's power and Fuxi's heavenly book had merged into one. Swoosh. After entering the heavenly book's territory, the power quickly turned into a golden pool and extended. When the key of the heavenly book appeared, Lin Muyu also took a deep breath and began to slowly increase the power of the king's combat flame. When it reached 3183%, he immediately stopped increasing the power. Looking at the key of the heavenly book in the distance, he gently stepped on the golden pool and directly leaped over. Close. The key of the heavenly book was getting closer and closer. As expected, the scene suddenly stretched, but the direction he was flying towards was still the key of the heavenly book. After all, his power was already accurate to the second decimal place. However, just as he was about to touch it, the scene rapidly stretched again. Shameless. Lin Muyu almost cursed out loud. Could it be that he had to be accurate to the third or even the fourth decimal place to obtain the key of the heavenly book? However, this time Lin Muyu did not say anything. Just as the scene was about to stretch, he raised his arm. The gourd vine broke out of his body and directly wrapped around the key of the heavenly book that was about 10 meters away. He suddenly exerted force and directly pulled the key of the heavenly book back. The key of the heavenly book was firmly in his hand. To deal with a shameless setting, one must use shameless methods. At this moment, the key of the heavenly book suddenly turned into a golden light and seeped into his body, as if some kind of seal had been opened. Lin Muyu's heavenly book was quickly sent out and returned to the real world. When he opened his eyes, he found that Fuxi's heavenly book was emitting a strange light. The originally wordless heavenly book had lines of tiny words. They were all divine words, which were oracle bone script. At this moment, Lin Muyu could not help but feel grateful for the arrangement of the heavens. Most people would not be able to understand the oracle bone script, but he could. This could be traced back to when he was young. In order to chase after girls, Lin Muyu had once been deeply immersed in the wonderful subject of archaeology, to the point that he had gone crazy studying the oracle bone inscriptions. It was no exaggeration to say that he was familiar with the oracle bone inscriptions, to the point that he had almost forgotten his original intention of studying archaeology to chase after girls. Looking at the divine text on the heavenly book, Lin Muyu was secretly delighted. It was time to learn the heavenly book's inscriptions. On the first line of the heavenly book there was a row of ice-type inscriptions. Frost, XXXXX, chill, XXXXX, freezing, XXXXX, snowflake, XXXX. Lin Muyu was confused. There were only a few words on this line of engraved text, and the rest were replaced by circle symbols. Could it be that she had to fill it in herself? Upon closer inspection, it seemed that this was indeed the case. It was said that the inscriptions of the tomes of heaven were not rigidly bound to the format. As early as thousands of years ago, there were many masters who could innovate the inscriptions of the tomes of heaven. They only had to follow a few keywords. Lin Muyu was relieved and slowly closed the Fushi tomes of Arcane. She was so tired that she was about to die. Moreover, she didn't have any materials for inscription. Even if she wanted to write the tomes of Arcane, she didn't have the conditions. She'd better have a good sleep. At this time, the sky was about to brighten. Wei Chao's voice came from outside the courtyard. Lord Commander, Miss Xiaoteng just came over. She said that there will be an auction for the Godslayer seal embryo this afternoon. She asked if you would like to personally come to the Purple Yinhua auction house? Okay. Lin Muyu pushed open the door of the main hall and said, send someone to tell Xiaoteng that I'll be there on time. Also, help me find a new bed. I want to have a good sleep. Yes, Commander. Wei Chou nodded his head. At the same time he looked at the ruined inner courtyard of the main hall. He could not help but be surprised, but he did not say anything. As a cultivator he naturally knew this kind of pain. The slightest carelessness could cause damage to objects, but for a cultivator to be strong enough to destroy a courtyard wall of 100 meters, Lin Muyu's strength could almost be called a monster. When she opened her eyes, it was already noon. Lin Muyu hurriedly got up and washed up. Wei Chou had prepared lunch and ate a few mouthfuls. Outside, Bai Yin held Taksha's hand and said with a smile, Commander, let's go. She turned around and got on the horse, bringing Bai Yin and Wei Chou straight to the Purple Yinhua auction house. Tongtian Street was filled with people. When they arrived in front of the Purple Yinhua auction house, Lin Muyu was shocked. There were so many people. It was a sea of people. There were carriages parked outside. Many of the carriages were decorated with gold and engraved patterns. 2 or 4 carriages could only be considered average. Some carriages were even pulled by 6 horses. This meant that they were at least marquises. Otherwise they wouldn't dare to be so ostentatious. Lin Muyu was also a marquis. Marquis Yunling was personally conferred by the Empress, but he didn't pay much attention to it. He whipped the horse quickly. No carriage was as comfortable as the treading snow warhorse. Fortunately, Jin Xiaoteng sent someone to welcome them. After entering through the side door of the auction house, they went straight to the auction house. Lin Muyu was arranged to be in a VIP room with a very good view. She could see everything in the auction house clearly. Furthermore, there were 2 beautiful maids serving her. They poured tea and presented plates of fruits. They were very enthusiastic. It seemed that these maids also knew the identity of the young general in front of them. He was one of the commanders of the 9 great armies of the empire. He was conferred the title of Marquis Yunling. He was also one of the 4 heroes of Lanyan conferred by the former emperor. He had completely defeated the Qianfeng army of the demon race in the Battle of Wildfire Plains. Wei Chou looked at the auction house and couldn't help but exclaim, there are so many people. Bai Yin nodded, at least 10,000 people. Lin Muyu smiled slightly. Only Jin Xiaoteng could create this kind of array, right? There was no lack of nobles among the people who came. For example, Tang Tian and Tang Lu, Marquis Lingbei and Marquis Lingxi were here. In addition, Prince Qin Yong of Prince Zhong's residence was also here. Prince Zhong's residence was one of the 4 great families of heavenly tomes. Because of the opening of the gate of heavenly defense, the heavenly tomes once again possessed the power of heaven and earth. As a result, Prince Zhong's residence, which had been in decline for hundreds of years and was almost forgotten by the world, rose rapidly. Even Qin Yin would respectfully address Qin Yong as uncle. It was enough to show how much the empire valued the heavenly tomes. On the auction stage, Jin Xiaoteng wore a fiery red soft armor and walked forward with a dagger in her hand. She smiled and said, first of all, I would like to thank everyone for coming to our Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce today. Xiaoteng greets everyone here. I know that most of you are here for the deity-slaying seal, but Xiaoteng would like to remind everyone that other than the deity-slaying seal, we still have many other treasures. For example, this mysterious grade level 2 dagger in my hand, it's used to kill and rob. Apui, it's an excellent weapon for self-defense. The starting price is 8,000 Jinin dollars. Lin Muyu sat by the window and smiled as she watched the auction. After 4 hours, Jin Xiaotong's throat was almost hoarse. After auctioning off dozens of items, it was finally time for the main event. Jin Xiaoteng carried a shield that glowed with a blood-red light and walked onto the stage. She smiled and said, here, this is the deity-slaying seal. The deity-slaying seal allows the user to possess a certain amount of divine power. Don't miss it when you walk past. The starting price is 1 million Jinin dollars. Everyone can bid now, but you must bring enough gold notes with you. Otherwise, Xiaoteng will personally send you to the Fire Sparrow Division and have the Fire Sparrow Division's patrol officers treat you with an iron plate. The crowd roared with laughter. Following that, the price of this finale item also began to be called out. 150W. Among the bustling crowd, a young man from the Zhong prince's residence raised his arm. It was Qin Jiao, the only son of the Zhong prince, Qin Yong. Presumably, the Zhong prince's residence had been moved to Lanyan City by Qin Yin's imperial edict, and the entire family must have received a lot of relocation expenses. For these aristocratic families of the heavenly books, Qin Yin had indeed spent a lot of money. Now, this sum of money, Lin Muyu wanted to get it all back for her girlfriend. A mere deity-slaying seal weapon embryo was useless. Even with the deity-slaying seal, could it be a match for a godly state expert? Obviously not. What Lin Muyu valued the most was the heavenly books. A low-grade heavenly book was enough to make Feng Jixing struggle. If he could gather 100 heavenly books and use them together, the power would be unimaginable. It should be similar to the apocalypse, right? Just as Lin Muyu was thinking about it, someone in the huge VIP seats raised his arm and said, 2 million Jinin dollars. The person who shouted was Ouyang Long, the eldest son of the heavenly book four great families, the Ouyang family. Lin Muyu could not help but snicker. These heavenly book four great families were simply thirsting for the deity-slaying seal weapon embryo. Finally, the people from the Ji residence made a move. Ji Shang raised his hand and shouted, 3 million Jinin dollars. 4 million Jinin dollars. Ouyang Long shouted, unwilling to be outdone. Immediately, Qin Jiao from the Zhong residence said angrily, crazy? The Ouyang family is a bunch of lunatics. Ji Shang was also stunned. He looked at Ji Lin suspiciously and said, Grandfather, where did the Ouyang family get 4 million Jinin dollars from? I'm afraid that all the rewards from the Empress wouldn't be that much, right? Ji Lin frowned. I don't know either. Continue bidding. If it exceeds 8 million, then forget it. Yes. Ji Shang raised his arm again. 5 million Jinin dollars. Ouyang Long's face was ashen. He gritted his teeth and said, damn it, I knew it wouldn't end well. As he spoke, he raised his voice and shouted, 7 million Jinin dollars. Everyone at the scene was scared out of their wits. A weapon embryo could be sold at such a high price. How much had it been inflated? 8 million Jinin dollars. Ji Shang's voice was trembling. This was the most money the Ji residents could offer. Any more, and they would probably have to sell their assets. Ouyang Long immediately stood up and shouted, 10 million Jinin dollars. Young master of the Ji residence, do you really want to compete with us? Ji Shang's face was full of forbearance. He cupped his fists and smiled. Ji Shang is convinced. This weapon embryo belongs to the Ouyang family. Jin Xiaotang was also grinning from ear to ear. With a bang, she finalized the deal and said, young master Ouyang Long of the Ouyang family has successfully bid 10 million Jinin dollars for the weapon embryo. Please come backstage and trade with me. That was 10 million Jinin dollars. It was enough to equip half of the Longdan army camp. These people were indeed lunatics who did not take money seriously. Chapter 499. Oh ho ho! At dusk, Jin Xiaotang's exaggerated laughter could be heard from the back hall of the Zine Flower Merchant Guild. She held a pile of gold notes in her hands and was grinning from ear to ear. She placed the gold notes on the table and laughed. Big brother, did you see that? It's a whole 10 million Jinin coins. A Godslayer seal embryo can be sold for such a high price. That's the entire Lingbei province's monthly income. This is ridiculous. Lin Muyu picked up a banknote with 100,000 Jinin coins printed on it. It was a banknote belonging to the North Ridge Gold Union. The North Ridge Gold Union was directly under the Ministry of Revenue, and its status was equivalent to the People's Bank of China. Therefore, these banknotes would definitely be exchanged for Jinin coins unless the empire fell. There were a total of 100 gold notes. After clearing them all, Lin Muyu laughed. Then these 10 million Jinin coins are all mine. I haven't had so much money in a long time. Is that okay? Jin Xiaotang smiled and nodded. Yes, yes. The Merchant Guild has enough funds to work with. Just one afternoon we earned more than 5 million from the auction. Hee, it's all thanks to the influence of this Godslayer seal embryo. Big brother, if you have time, make a few more Godslayer seals and Godslayer seals to solidify the Zine Flower Merchant Guild's position as the #1 merchant guild in Lanyan City. Jin Xiaotang couldn't close her mouth and said happily, now I can imagine how ugly Pan Ding Tian, Lu Xian and Zhao Su's faces will be. Oh ho ho! The Godslayer seal and Godslayer seal are both high-level inscriptions. They can't be inscribed just because you want to. It depends on your luck and technique. Anyway, wait for me to inscribe them. Lin Muyu kept the gold notes and said, Xiaotang, didn't you say you wanted to win over a group of people who can inscribe the heavenly tomes? How did it go? No results. Jin Xiaotang pouted and said unhappily, anyone who can inscribe the heavenly tomes has gone to the heavenly tomes pavilion. It said that those who can inscribe the earthly tomes, heavenly tomes, and godly tomes will be conferred with titles. This isn't something that can be bought with gold. Alright, Lin Muyu muttered, let's not talk about this anymore. How about the heavenly book inscription materials in our Chamber of Commerce? Prepare one for me, I want to learn to inscribe heavenly book inscriptions. Jin Xiaotang's eyes brightened, and a refreshing smile immediately appeared on her originally unhappy face. She held onto Lin Muyu's arm and said, Brother, you wants to learn the tomes of arcane inscription? Yeah, can't I? Yes. Jin Xiaotang could already see spirit books, earth books, and heavenly books flying towards the Chamber of Commerce. Based on her experience, Lin Muyu was a freak who could basically learn everything, and she was able to reach the peak very quickly. It could be said that half of the credit for the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce's position as the number one in Lanyan City came from Jin Xiaotang's operations, and the other half came from Lin Muyu's repeated supply of high-grade weapons and engravings. They first went to the material shop, and saw that the huge material shop was filled with boxes of spirit stone powder, all of which had been crushed. Moreover, there were many beautiful girls standing in the shop, attracting attention. Looking at these girls, every one of them was very beautiful, and the strength of the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce could be seen from this. A fat shopkeeper came forward. He knew Lin Muyu and said with a face full of smiles, Miss Xiaotang, what did you bring Commander Yu here to take? He said take, not buy. He was a smart person, and knew that the entire Chamber of Commerce belonged to Lin Muyu. He didn't need to buy anything, he only needed to take it. Jin Xiaotang was still holding onto Lin Muyu's wrist and said with a smile, My brother wants to buy some spirit stone powder to learn the tomes of arcane inscription. Shopkeeper Su, do as you see fit. Learn the tomes of arcane inscription. The fat on Shopkeeper Su's face trembled, and then he said with a face full of smiles, Commander Yu, the spirit stone powder needed to learn the tomes of arcane inscription is divided into 4 grades. Mysterious iron powder, mysterious copper powder, mysterious silver powder, and mysterious gold powder. Each type of spirit stone powder is further divided into lower, middle, upper, and supreme grade according to its purity and spiritual power. If Commander Yu is a beginner, then you can bring some supreme mysterious iron powder back. Although the spiritual power of mysterious iron powder is weak, as long as you have the strength of the brush and the mental state, you can also write a human book or even a spiritual book. Jin Xiaotang immediately became unhappy and she frowned. Tui, how can my brother Yu use such a lowly material like mysterious iron powder to learn the tomes of arcane inscription? First, weigh 5 caddies of supreme mysterious silver powder for practice. Shopkeeper Su's body trembled and he said, Eldest Miss, supreme mysterious silver powder costs 50 Jinyin coins per caddy. 1 caddy of supreme mysterious silver powder is 5,000 Jinyin coins, so 5 caddies would be 25,000 Jinyin coins. It's too wasteful to use it all for practice. Jin Xiaotang's pink lips curled up, and she had an unhappy expression on her face. What? My brother Yu is the commander of the Valiant Dragon Legion, a first-rank general, and the Marquis of Yunling, conferred the title of Marquis of Yunling by His Highness. You actually think that he is not worthy of 25,000 Jinyin coins? Cold sweat broke out on Shopkeeper Su's forehead. How could he afford to offend her? The only reason he said all this was because he was a businessman and he wanted to save money. He was at a loss of what to do and he hurriedly knelt down. Commander Yu, please forgive me, I didn't mean it that way. Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh and she raised her hand, and an invisible pressure from the Saint Realm helped the shopkeeper up. She said, Don't be afraid, I didn't mean it that way. Since you said it like that, then give me 5 caddies of low-grade mysterious copper powder. Since I can't write high-grade tomes of arcane inscription like the Spirit Book or the Earth Book, I can practice first. Okay. Shopkeeper Su wiped the sweat off his forehead, and while he was amazed by the mysterious and invisible power, he ordered his servant, Come, give Commander Yu 5 caddies of low-grade mysterious copper powder. Yes, shopkeeper. But Jin Xiaotang still wasn't satisfied and she said, That, little fellow, give big brother Yu 2 caddies of top-grade mysterious silver powder and 2 caddies of mid-grade mysterious gold powder as well. After he practices, he must use a good amount of spirit powder. Just put it on the Chamber of Commerce's account. Got it? The shop assistant happily went to weigh the spirit powder. Shopkeeper Su muttered under his breath, My god, mid-grade mysterious gold powder is already the best inscription material in our Chamber of Commerce. One caddy costs 500 Genine coins, so 2 caddies would be 100,000 Genine coins. Miss Xiaoteng, we only have less than 10 caddies of mid-grade mysterious gold powder. Why don't we give Commander Yu low-grade mysterious gold powder? Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh. Jin Xiaoteng was immediately angered. Shopkeeper Su, why are you babbling like this? Look, Big Brother Yu is laughing because of you. Quick, mid-grade mysterious gold powder, don't be so stingy. Lin Muyu reached out and patted Jin Xiaoteng's shoulder and said with a smile, It's alright Xiaoteng, just give me 2 caddies of low-grade mysterious gold powder, I'm not angry. With a calculative merchant like Shopkeeper Su in the Chamber of Commerce, there's no need to worry that the Chamber of Commerce won't prosper. Jin Xiaoteng couldn't help but smile. Alright then, I'll listen to Big Brother Yu. After buying the spiritual powder, the next thing to buy was an engraving pen. All the heavenly book inscriptions were written with a pen, and people called it a spiritual pen. In fact, the so-called spiritual pen was fake. It was just a hollow object similar to a ballpoint pen, and when the spiritual powder was poured into it, the spiritual powder would naturally seep into the tool embryo. Once the strength of the pen and the state of mind were sufficient, the power of heaven and earth would be activated to form a book. Therefore, Lin Muyu randomly bought a few spiritual pens and stuffed them into the Qingquan bag. Then she continued to look for the third required material with Jin Xiaoteng, the tool embryo. The requirements for the carrier of the heavenly book inscriptions were much stricter than the engraving, and the tool embryo must also have a certain amount of spiritual power. Therefore, the weapons, shields and armors made of mysterious iron and mysterious copper would be more likely to activate the power of heaven and earth. It was also because of this that the major chambers of commerce had opened new tool embryo shops, to sell some tool embryos that could easily be turned into books. The scale of the tool embryo shop was much larger than the spiritual powder shop. It was brightly lit, and all the tool embryos were stored in glass cabinets, reflecting a strange luster under the light of the candles. Jin Xiaoteng smiled and introduced, the tool embryos are divided into 5 types: low grade, middle grade, fine, high grade, and top grade. The prices are also getting more and more expensive. The cheapest low-grade tool embryo can be bought for about 1 Genine coin, but the price of a top-grade tool embryo can be raised to more than 10,000 Genine coins. In fact, many of the mysterious and spiritual grade weapons that Big Brother Yu has forged are already very good tool embryos. However, if you're a beginner in heavenly book inscriptions, Xiaoteng suggests that you buy some low-grade, middle-grade, and fine tool embryos from the shop. Lin Muyu nodded and quickly picked a pile of daggers, swords, broadswords, shields, and other tool embryos. Most of them were middle-grade and fine tool embryos. His gaze swept across a golden dagger placed in the center of the shop. Jin Xiaoteng burst into laughter. That dagger is called the Dazzling Gold Dagger. It's made from dark gold and is a mysterious grade rank 1 weapon. It has a lot of spiritual energy and is a top-grade tool embryo. It's probably the best tool embryo in the Purple Flower Chamber of Commerce. Big Brother Yu, do you want it? There's no need, it'll be a waste. Lin Muyu touched his nose. Jin Xiaoteng giggled. Alright then, we'll study this after Big Brother Yu has made some progress in heavenly book inscriptions. Just as Lin Muyu was packing up everything, a chilly arch from the royal army walked straight over and cupped his fists respectfully. Commander Yu, Her Highness has set up a banquet at the Zetian Palace tonight and has invited you. Please head over to the Zetian Palace before sunset. Oh, is there something important to discuss? Lin Muyu asked. I don't know. Alright, you may go. Yes. Qin Yin had set up a banquet at the Zetian Palace. It seemed that there was no way for him to study heavenly book inscriptions tonight. He had to go and take a look first. Chapter 500. At night, the Zetian Palace Hall was brightly lit. Hundreds of celestial crane lanterns shone with a faint luster, illuminating the magnificent palace hall. When Lin Muyu arrived, she found that many important officials had already arrived. The 2 princes, Tang Lan and Su Muyun, were both present. Although outsiders could not be conferred the title of king, the power of these 2 people was simply too great. The rule that outsiders could not be conferred the title of king seemed to exist in name only to them. Other than these important officials from the various departments, there were also the commanders of the various armies, as well as the ministers of the 6 ministries. Other than these important officials from the various ministries, there were some unfamiliar faces. Some of them Lin Muyu knew, such as Ji Lin, Ouyang Ping and the others. They were people from the 4 great clans of the Heavenly Book. Most of the people attending the banquet tonight were people from the Heavenly Book Pavilion. One could already faintly foresee what was going to happen. Moo! Tang Xiaoxi welcomed her from afar. She was wearing a fiery red gown. The gown was decorated with exquisite gems and golden patterns, making this beautiful young lady who was gradually maturing look even more beautiful. The long gown wrapped around her exquisite and curvy body, outlining the perfect curves that were filled with youthfulness. It could simply be said that she was radiating brilliance. Lin Muyu's eyes couldn't help but light up. She smiled and said, "Xiaoxi is really beautiful tonight." Tang Xiaoxi pouted and said with a smile, "Fortunately you came today. Otherwise wouldn't I have dressed up for nothing?" As she said that, she seemed to feel that her words were too suggestive. She couldn't help but blush and turned her pretty face away from Lin Muyu, pretending that she didn't say anything. "All right, let's take our seats." The commander of the Imperial Guards, Qin Yan, had already walked over in a suit of armor. Behind him were a few Imperial Guards with calm expressions. He cupped his fist respectfully and said with a smile, "Big brother, you've come? You and Princess Xi's seats will be arranged at the place closest to His Highness. Follow me." "All right." After everyone took their seats, Qin Yan finally arrived. She was dressed in a beautiful dark blue gown, and the pattern of a divine dragon was embellished with a sapphire gem. It was beautiful and majestic. She held the faintly glowing heaven-suppressing sword in her hand. She gently sat on the throne and looked at the officials with a smile. She was not angry, but she was not angry. With the arrival of the Empress, everyone naturally quietened down quickly. However, Qin Yan's gaze fell on Lin Muyu because she hadn't seen him for many days. Lin Muyu and Qin Yan looked at each other. She could read the longing in Qin Yan's eyes. She couldn't help but pout mischievously and blow the Empress a kiss. Immediately, Qin Yan's face turned red, but the officials were too far away and the angle was not right. They didn't know what happened, but Shengguan Jingyue, who was standing beside Qin Yan, burst into laughter. "All right, let's start the banquet," Qin Yan said. "Yes." Shengguan Jingyue walked forward, announced the start of the banquet and served the wine and dishes. Ever since the reorganization of the Imperial Guards, the Eagle Nest Barracks had also been rebuilt. Qin Yan personally supervised the construction, and very quickly, it had an establishment of 700 to 800 people. Furthermore, there was no lack of experts. Therefore, there was no need to worry about the food supply in Zetian Palace Hall. There were many wild animals and rare fruits in the dragon-seeking forest. Very quickly, the table was filled with them, and a refreshing fragrance assaulted the senses. Lin Muyu's gaze was fixed on the plate of fish in front of him. It smelled very fragrant. It was the legendary arowana. The taste was extremely delicious, and it had already whetted his appetite. Qin Yan held up her wine cup, stood up gently and said, "Everyone, I have invited everyone here for a joyous gathering tonight. I hope that everyone will not be restrained and will not leave until we are drunk. Come, let us drink to the fullest. May the Qin Empire be prosperous and peaceful, and prosperous for all eternity. Prosperous and peaceful and prosperous for all eternity." Everyone raised their cups in unison and drained the wine in one gulp. No one dared to disrespect the Empress's toast. After drinking the wine, a wave of mellow fragrance and spiciness flowed into her throat. Lin Muyu immediately swept through the delicacies on the table in front of her. While she was gorging herself, one of the people at the banquet stood up. It was Ji Lin. "Manager Ji Lin, what's the matter?" Qin Yan asked with a smile. Ji Lin cupped his fists and said, "Your Highness, I have already drafted out the ranks and treatment of the people who will be joining the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Please take a look." Qin Yan waved her hand and said, "Sir Manager, you can just read it out directly. Let everyone listen to it." "Yes." Ji Lin took out a scroll hidden in his sleeve, opened it and said in a clear voice, "The Heavenly Book Pavilion uses literature to govern the country. Anyone who can write a heavenly book can be included in the literary circles of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Those who write a book of adulthood will be titled Person, with a monthly salary of 200 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of spiritual books will be titled Spiritual Knight, with a monthly salary of 1,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of earthly books will be titled Earthly Scholar, with a monthly salary of 3,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of heavenly books will be titled Heavenly Scholar, with a monthly salary of 10,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of God will be titled Duke, with a monthly salary of 100,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of God will be titled Duke, with a monthly salary of 10,000 gold kin coins. Those who write a book of God will be titled Duke, with a monthly salary of 100,000 gold kin coins. Your Highness, please take a look. After Ji Lin's speech, it was as if a huge rock had been thrown into a peaceful banquet, causing a huge uproar. One person slammed the table and stood up. It was the commander of the Iron Blade Army, Su Long. His expression was very ugly, and his words were full of the smell of gunpowder. He said, "Pa, writing a book of heavenly books and you can be titled as a duke? Do you think the marquises of the Qin Empire are cabbages that can be found on the streets? A mere earthly scholar wants a monthly salary of 3,000 gold kin coins? Dream on. Do you know the monthly salary of the commanders of the Qin Empire? The dignified commander of the Iron Blade Army only gets a monthly salary of 1,000 gold kin coins. What right do you, a mere earthly scholar, have to receive so much more than us?" Another commander also stood up and cupped his fists. He said, "Your Highness, please understand. We, the soldiers of the Qin Empire, have risked our lives to fight against the demon race and the rebels of the Iha Kingdom, in exchange for the temporary peace and tranquility of the Qin Empire. Many soldiers have died for the Qin Empire, and now you are actually conferring titles to these so-called scholars. The soldiers of the Qin Empire cannot accept this." More and more people objected. Even the faces of Feng Jixing, Xiang Yu and Su Yu showed some displeasure. Qin Yin saw this and silently nodded. She said, "I understand what the commanders mean. However, the Book of Heavenly Books is a mysterious formation that can draw the power of heaven and earth. The Qin Empire has no choice but to pay attention to it. As for Sir Ji Lin's rank and the distribution of monthly salary, it is not too exaggerated. After all, no one has been able to write a book of heavenly books, and even books of earthly books are extremely rare." At this moment, the Minister of Revenue stood up and said respectfully, "Your Highness, the revenue of the Ministry of Revenue is almost fixed every year. If it is really like Sir Ji Lin's distribution of rewards, I'm afraid that the expenditure of the Ministry of Revenue will greatly exceed the budget. As the number of scholars engraved the Book of Heavenly Books increases, this expenditure will definitely increase until the Ministry of Revenue can no longer bear it." "Your Highness," Feng Jixing said calmly, "I think it is better to slightly reduce the monthly salary of some scholars. Otherwise, it will really be like what the Minister of Revenue said. The entire empire's income will be burdened by the Heavenly Book Pavilion." However, at this moment, Qin Yong of Prince Zhong residence stood up and cupped his fists respectfully. "Your Highness, once the strategy of ruling the country with literature is formulated, it must not be abandoned. This old official thinks that the salary that Manager Ji Lin has listed is not excessive." Qin Yin nodded lightly. "I understand. Uncle Wang, please sit down." "Yes." At this moment, Xiang Yu slowly stood up and said, "Your Highness, the demon race and the Iha nation's rebels are still eyeing the empire covetously. If we spend all the Jingxian coins on the Heavenly Book Pavilion, once the demon race and the Iha nation start another war, how will the empire defend itself? Don't tell me we can only rely on these weak scholars holding the Book of Heavenly Books to guard our territory? This lowly general doesn't know. If these scholars can hear the sound of the Iha nation's iron hooves and pee their pants." Lin Muyu couldn't help but laugh. Even Xiang Yu seemed to be unable to sit still. Once Qin Yin approved the Heavenly Book Pavilion's request, the empire would really be strong in literature but weak in martial arts. At this moment, beside the patriarch of the four great clans, Lu Yen, a handsome man stood up. With a schwa sound, he put away his paper fan, cupped his fists and said respectfully, "Your Highness, I believe that the various commanders must not have seen the power of the Heavenly Book inscriptions. If they had seen it, they would most likely agree with Lord Steward Ji Lin's request." Xiang Yu raised his eyebrows. "Who are you?" The young man respectfully said, "I am the second son of the Lu residents, Lu Feng." Qin Yin smiled slightly. "Young Master Lu Feng, what grade of heavenly book can you write?" Lu Feng replied, "I am untalented. I just wrote a low-grade earthly book late last night. If I have more time, I will definitely write a real heavenly book for your highness." Not far away, Ji Lin said, "Your Highness, the second son of the Lu residents, Lu Feng, is indeed a rare genius. He is able to write an earthly book at the age of 27, which is rare in the world. His aptitude and comprehension are top-notch." "Is that so?" Qin Yin's eyes were filled with praise. "The empire needs a talent like young Master Lu Feng. I hope that you will continue to work hard." Lu Feng raised his head and looked at Qin Yin. Immediately, he was deeply subdued by the Empress's peerless beauty. For a moment, his face was filled with admiration. He cupped his fists and said, "For your highness, I will definitely not let you down." He kept saying "for your highness," which made everyone a little unhappy. Furthermore, Lu Feng's gaze towards Qin Yin was obviously less respectful and more frivolous. Feng Jixing was slightly angry and said, "Young Master Lu Feng, as a subject, you actually dare to look directly at Her Highness's appearance. Aren't you being too frivolous?" Lu Feng hurriedly lowered his head and said respectfully, "I deserve to die. It's just that Her Highness's appearance is like that of a celestial being. It's so breathtakingly beautiful that it's like a fairy descending to the mortal world. I couldn't help but look at it for a while longer. I hope that Her Highness will forgive me." Feng Jixing clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were filled with anger. At this moment, Lin Muyu stood up and said, "Your Highness, I request that the salary of the Heavenly Book Pavilion be reduced by half." "Oh, does brother you think so too?" Qin Yin smiled sweetly. When Lu Feng saw how intimate Qin Yin was with Lin Muyu, he felt uncomfortable and said, "Your Highness, the salary of the Heavenly Book Pavilion must not be reduced. Scholars are the foundation of an empire. In my opinion, we should reduce the size and equipment expenditure of the major armies of the empire and spend the Jinin coins on the Heavenly Book inscriptions." Bullsh*T. Lin Muyu cursed and said, "How can you say something like reducing the empire's armies? Once the demon race and Iha nation start a war, will the empire rely on trash like you to guard the borders?" Lu Feng raised his sword-like eyebrows and said, "Scholars are not useless. Everyone in the empire can cultivate martial arts, but not everyone can write a heavenly book inscription. Only 1 in 10,000 can write a book. Commander Yu is proud of his outstanding martial arts cultivation, but you must not look down on the Heavenly Book Pavilion because a heavenly book is something you will never be able to reach in your lifetime." "Is that so?" Lin Muyu sneered. "If I can write a heavenly book, the salary of the Heavenly Book Pavilion will be reduced by half. How about it? You can write a book?" Lu Feng couldn't help but laugh. His eyes were full of disdain as he said, "If Commander you can write a heavenly book, even if it's just a personal book, I, Lu Feng, will concede defeat." Chapter 501. "Fine, I'll write it," Lin Muyu lightly said. Lu Feng laughed loudly. The disdain in his eyes was not concealed at all. "Commander Yu, as a general of the empire, you are indeed a true person, but do you know hieroglyphs? Do you need this Lu to bring you a hieroglyphs translation book?" "No need." Lin Muyu slowly stood up. At this time, a young man from the Zhong Palace also stood up. It was Qin Jiao, the son of the Zhong Palace. After all, he was a member of the Qin family and Lin Muyu was Qin Jin's adopted son. So, when it came to a conflict, he stood on Lin Muyu's side. Qin Jiao took out a spirit pen and then a small wooden box, saying, "Commander Yu, this is a spirit pen and 2 taels of mid-grade mysterious silver powder. If you don't mind, I'll lend it to you." "Thank you, Young Highness Qin Jiao." Lin Muyu cupped her hands and smiled. Feng Jixing glared at her. Do you know heavenly book inscriptions? Don't force yourself." Tang Xiaoxi also pouted. "Hasn't Mu not started learning yet? This is most likely going to lose." Lin Muyu held the spirit pen and slowly poured the mysterious silver powder into it. Then she looked at the group of Heavenly Book Pavilion scholars and smiled. "Does anyone have a blank tool embryo? Can I borrow it for a bit?" Everyone was silent. Only a beautiful girl sitting next to Lu Feng stood up. She was wearing a pretty floral dress and was full of youthfulness. She held a curved blade on her waist in her hand and said with a smile, "Commander Yu, this is my personal blade. It can be considered as a mid-tier incomplete weapon. If you don't mind, Lu Feng couldn't help but be a bit angry. This girl was none other than the eldest young miss of the Lu residence, Lu Ying. She was 18 years old and had a very delicate appearance, at least 9 out of 10. Moreover, she seemed to have a good impression of Lin Muyu. Her beautiful eyes stared straight at Lin Muyu with adoration as she smiled. "Second brother, Commander Yu is the hero that defeated the demon race. What's wrong with lending him a tool embryo? Don't be so stingy." Lu Feng sighed and could not help but feel a little speechless. As the saying goes, beauties love heroes. Lu Ying was still young, so naturally she was especially fond of Lin Muyu, who looked extraordinarily handsome and had an outstanding cultivation base. When Lu Ying handed the curved blade to Lin Muyu, she smiled and said, "Commander Yu, do your best. Strive to write a heavenly book, do your best." "Thank you, third mistress." Lin Muyu nodded. Not far away, Tang Xiaoxi was kneeling by the table. Do Qi was enshrouding her body and a faint flame lingered around her fiery red dress. She was about to transform into her 9 tails. Watching Lu Ying flirting with Lin Muyu from afar, she was so angry, this little vixen. Qin Yin was not much better. Her eyes were fixed on Lu Ying and her crescent moon-like eyebrows were slightly knitted. She was also angry. This little vixen, she really wanted to take off her dress and rush down the stairs to fight it out with her. Shengguan Jingyue saw everything clearly and couldn't help but smile. She whispered, "Your Highness, you are the ruler of a country. You can't lower yourself to the level of a little girl. Bear with it." The manager of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, Ji Lin, stood up shakily. With a faint smile on his face he said, "Commander Yu, one of the 4 heroes of Lan and Yen conferred by the former emperor, personally wrote a heavenly book. This old man will personally carry it out for Commander Yu." At this time an imperial guard came forward with a tray. Ji Lin and him each held a tray so that Lin Muyu's tool embryo had a place to put it. Lin Muyu's heart was still somewhat perturbed. Just now, she said that she wanted to write a heavenly book in a moment of anger. Now it was too late to regret it. What she had to think about now was what if it didn't become a book? That would be so shameful. Not only would it reduce the military expenditure of the major armies of the empire, but it would also directly embarrass the empress. What should she do? When he put Lu Ying's knife on the tray, countless years flew through his mind. He complained incessantly. This was really hard to get off. He hadn't even started to learn the heavenly book, and there was only one inscription in his mind, which was about frost. He didn't know if it would be successful. "Commander Yu, shall we start?" Ji Lin said with a smile. Lin Muyu responded with a polite smile. Then, she lifted the spiritual pen and gently exerted her strength. Suddenly, a stream of mysterious silver powder flowed out from the tip of the pen. The mysterious silver powder fell on the knife and immediately seeped into the steel, becoming a mark. As Lin Muyu wrote very carefully, 2 hieroglyphs had appeared on the knife, frost. Ji Lin was slightly stunned. He only knew that Lin Muyu's cultivation had stepped into the Holy King realm, and she was one of the few top experts in the empire. He didn't expect that this commander, who was ranked second among the 4 heroes of Lan Yen, could really recognize the hieroglyphs and could even write them. Even the technique of writing these words was very skillful. Only Lin Muyu knew all the pressure and pain. She complained incessantly in her heart. Her palm holding the spiritual pen trembled slightly, and her mind carefully recalled the keywords of this hieroglyphs: chilling, freezing, snowflake. The keywords of these 8 words must exist, otherwise she couldn't activate the power of the law of heaven and earth. If I die, so be it. Right. He suddenly calmed down, and in an instant the golden light in his eye shone brightly. A giant pen fell from the sky, bringing with it a brilliant light. It was the realm of the holy pen Amaterasu. Lin Muyu couldn't help but be stunned. Was the realm of the holy pen Amaterasu the same as the heavenly book? Thinking of this, the pen moved like a dragon and quickly wrote the second paragraph. The chilling from purgatory, the chilling swallowed everything, froze everything in the world, and the sky was filled with endless snowflakes. All 8 keywords had appeared. But, the whole knife was silent, and there was no movement of the power of heaven and earth. Ha! During the banquet, the 3rd young master of the Ouyang mansion, Ouyang Bao, laughed loudly. "It seems that the power of heaven and earth has not been activated. 3rd Miss Lu Ying's knife is considered broken. Commander Yu, you should think about how to train the soldiers. Your hieroglyphs are not as good as your martial arts comprehension." Another group of disciples from the Heavenly Book clan started to make a ruckus. "Commander Yu, give up, it's useless. The Heavenly Book inscriptions are the most mysterious power in the world. Those who haven't practiced for many years can't activate the power of heaven and earth. Commander Yu, it's not a shame not to have a book. Your achievements are already high enough, ha ha ha. It seems that not everyone can enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion." "Ah, interesting, interesting." Sarcastic voices came one after another. Qin Yin frowned as she listened, and her palm pressed on the hilt of the heaven-suppressing sword. Tang Xiaoxi was even angrier. She held the flaming nation-suppressing whip in her hand, ready to lash at these bastards at any time. But Lin Muyu remained calm. Logically speaking, he had already activated the realm of the holy pen, Amaterasu, and should not have failed. No, there must be an error in these hieroglyphs. After looking at it carefully again, he suddenly realized that there was a problem with the word hua in the snowflake. According to the Oracle Bone script, there should be 2 horizontal lines below the word hua, but he only wrote 1 line. So that's why. He waved the spiritual pen lightly and added a horizontal line. In an instant, his spiritual sense seemed to leave his body, and his surroundings turned into a world of ice and snow. The scimitar appeared in the world of ice and snow, and the chill came whistling, freezing everything in the world. Is this the state of mind of the Heavenly Book? At this moment, a green light suddenly shot up from the scimitar into the sky, activating the power of heaven and earth. It's a book? Oh my god, it's a human book. Lin Muyu really wrote an adult book. Genius? He hasn't written a heavenly book before, right? Writing a book in one go, oh my god, what a freak. Looking at the intensity of the light, it should be a middle-grade human book. A beginner can actually write a middle-grade human book, it's really not easy. Everyone turned pale with fright, even Ji Lin was a little shocked. As the patriarch of the Heavenly Book clan, Ji Lin could be considered to have seen some geniuses in divine text, but he had never seen someone like Lin Muyu who could complete a book on her first try. Moreover, the book she wrote on her first try was not a low-grade book, but a mid-grade book. This was too shocking. Lu Ying sat there excitedly, and her pair of beautiful eyes were full of hope. She was so excited that she almost cried, wow. Lin Muyu is worthy of being one of the 4 heroes of Lan Yen. She's so powerful she wrote a book. Lu Feng frowned and his expression was extremely ugly. Qinin was overjoyed. She never thought that Lin Muyu could really write a book. She couldn't help but look at Tang Xiaoxi with joy. The two beautiful girls' eyes met. Well, it's time to learn Heavenly Book inscription with Lin Muyu. But at this time Lin Muyu still didn't stop. According to the records in Fushi's Heavenly Book, there were 4 more words, which were also the 4 words of the title, and also the words that named the Heavenly Book inscription. After thinking for a while, she continued to write 4 words, eyesalls everywhere. Whoosh! Another ray of Heavenly Book light rose from the blade, triggering a faint thunder in the sky. This time the green light was even more intense, like a green light pillar shooting straight into the sky. Oh my god, Ji Lin was stunned. It was the second time it became a book, and it wasn't a middle-grade human book. According to the intensity of the light, this blade was already a top-grade human book embryo. Around them, everyone was already grinning from ear to ear, and their faces were filled with disbelief. It wasn't surprising that a person could write a human book. After all, after the gate of Heavenly Imperial Army reopened, many people had written human books and spiritual books. But to be able to write a top-grade human book on his first time inscribing a heavenly book, he must be a peerless genius. Even this kind of comprehension was above Lu Feng, the second young master of the Lu residence, who was known as a super genius. Qin Yin stood up majestically and said with a faint smile, "Manager Ji Lin, have you confirmed it?" Ji Lin was a little disappointed. "Reporting to your highness, Commander Yu has written a top-grade human book, he is really a genius." Qin Yin smiled slightly, looked at Lu Feng and said, "Young Master Lu Feng, are you convinced?" Lu Feng was like a defeated rooster, cupped his fists and said, I admit defeat, but I will not admit defeat. One day I will write a heavenly book, a divine book. I hope that Commander Yu will also have such a day." This was tantamount to his second challenge. Lin Muyu ignored Lu Feng's provocation, cupped her fists and said, "Since even a third-rate scholar like me can write a human book, it means that a divine book is not as difficult as you think. Your Highness, please issue an edict." Qin Yin smiled knowingly and said, "Come, draft an edict to allow the Heavenly Will Pavilion's manager Ji Lin to write the ranking system, but the salary of all scholars will be halved, and the expenses will be paid by the Ministry of Revenue. The Empire will rule both civil and military, and will not favor any side." Yes. Chapter 502. Qin Yin stood up. Her dark blue dress was sparkling. The wind was getting stronger and stronger. The female officer had already put a female empress cloak on her. She held the golden wine goblet in one hand and put the other on the hilt of the heaven-suppressing sword hanging on her waist. She looked at the officials with watery eyes and said in a low but powerful voice, "After the Iha Kingdom's chaos, the empire has been rebuilt. However, the rebels of the Iha Kingdom in the south may cross the Qinling Mountains and invade at any time. We don't know how many armor demons are left in the 23 cities of the demon race in the east. After Min-Yulin's border army was wiped out in Winterfrost City, the nomadic army of the northern desert is also ready to move. Outside the desert in the west, we don't know how many foreign tribes are coveting the fertile land of the Qin Empire. Qin Yin inherited the throne of the former empress and only hoped to revive the foundation of the Qin Empire and unify the empire. Therefore, I hope that everyone here can work together to strengthen the prestige of the empire. No matter the Heavenly Book Pavilion, the Divine Palace, or the armies of the empires, from now on, there must be no internal strife or disagreement. Otherwise they will be severely punished." As she spoke, she raised her long snow-white neck and downed a glass of wine in one gulp. Then with a clang she pulled out the heaven-suppressing sword. The sharp sword light was chilling under the candlelight. Just like that, Qin Yin placed the heaven-suppressing sword on the table, imperceptibly adding some pressure and majesty to the banquet. Lin Muyu looked at Qin Yin and couldn't help nodding in appreciation. It seemed that Qin Yin had grown a lot and was becoming more and more like a real empress. At this moment, Ji Lin raised his wine goblet to Lin Muyu and said with a smile, "Commander Yu, you have an excellent comprehension ability. You can actually write an excellent book of people in one go. I wonder if Commander Yu is willing to include this saber in the Heavenly Book Pavilion and your name in the list of scholars at the same time. You can enjoy the double treatment that His Highness has given you." Of course, Lin Muyu didn't want to live under someone else's roof. After all, his current status didn't allow him to start from zero. He smiled and said, "I get my salary from the Ministry of War every month, so I don't need to be included in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Manager Ji Lin, thank you for your kindness." Ji Lin cupped his hands in salute. There was not a trace of displeasure on his face. However, everyone knew that Ji Lin was known as the best heavenly book writer in the empire, and he was also the most promising person to write the embryo of a heavenly book. After being summoned by the female empress to settle in Lanyan City, the Ji residents became even more arrogant, and they even looked down on the imperial commanders like Feng Jixing and Xiang Yu. Now that he was publicly rejected by Lin Muyu, one could imagine how angry Ji Lin was. However, this was the terrifying thing about humans. On the surface, Ji Lin was still calm and composed. He did not show any emotions on his face as if nothing had happened. Lin Muyu held the scimitar that was used to write the book of a good person and walked straight to the front of the Lu residence. Lu Ying had already stood up with a smile on her face. "Congratulations, Commander Yu. You have written the best book of a good person. You are truly a genius in the heavenly book of inscription." "Thank you, Third Mistress, for the embryo of a good person." Lin Muyu smiled slightly. "Now, it is time to return the embryo to Third Mistress." Lu Ying was stunned for a moment and said, "Originally this scimitar wasn't worth much, but Commander Yu had already carved the best quality human script on it. This is no longer an ordinary scimitar. Lu Ying can't accept such a precious gift in return." Lin Muyu could not help but laugh. "Originally, I should have compensated you with another one if the inscription is broken. Now that it is done, take it as a thank you gift. Third Mistress, you don't have to be so courteous. Otherwise, I will feel indebted to you if I take this scimitar away." Lu Ying's bright eyes stared straight at the youngest and most promising general of the Qin Empire. The more she looked, the more she liked him. However, the reserved and shy nature of a young girl forced her to calm down. With a red face she said, "If that is the case, then Lu Ying thanks Commander Yu for the gift. I will keep this scimitar well." Lin Muyu was speechless. She couldn't help but feel helpless in her heart. Her luck with the ladies in the Empire had been unusually good these few years. Thinking back to when she was on Earth, she wasn't that popular. She returned the machete to Lu Ying and cupped her hands to salute Lu Yen. Lu Yen hurriedly stood up to return the salute and said, "Marquis Yunling is too polite. Lord Lu Yen, please sit. There is no need to be polite." "Yes, Lord Marquis." Lin Muyu turned around and sat down next to Tang Xiaoxi with a relaxed body. However, he saw Tang Xiaoxi looking at him faintly. He could not help but wonder, "Is there something on my face?" Tang Xiaoxi stared at him with a pair of beautiful eyes. "What do you think? That Lu Ying, did she fall for you?" "I don't know, not necessarily." Lin Muyu's heart was beating fast. "You still say that? Everyone can see that Lu Ying likes you." Then I have no choice." Lin Muyu said helplessly, "This is not something I can control." Tang Xiaoxi was still looking at him angrily. "I really didn't do it on purpose." Lin Muyu coaxed. But Tang Xiaoxi was still unhappy. "Xiaoxi, I was wrong." Lin Muyu continued to coax. Tang Xiaoxi still did not give him face. "Anyway, I don't like her," Lin Muyu said. This time Tang Xiaoxi's anger turned into joy. She tilted her head and asked him with a smile, "Really? Really? That's good. Otherwise, I will punish you on behalf of Xiao Yin." Although Tang Xiaoxi said so, her face was already filled with a refreshing and charming smile. A girl's mind was really hard to guess. Sure enough, a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. The banquet ended very late. After it was over, all the officials dispersed, but Lin Muyu was left behind. The #1 female official of the Zetian Palace, Shangguan Jingyue, brought him to the rear hall, only to find that Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi were both there. The rear hall was filled with spirit books and earth books that were glowing with a faint luster. These divine characters were carved on the stones, and basically, they would never be used by anyone in their lifetime. After all, the stones were too big and they were not suitable for the shape of weapons. Also, no one would carry a stone tablet into battle as it would be too inelegant. However, the purpose of these books was to serve as a model for others to learn from. Alright, don't be nervous. Qin Yin walked forward, held his arm, and signaled for Shengguan Jingyue to step down. Then she smiled and said, "Now can you teach me and Xiaoxi how to carve the characters? We have written it until now, but it hasn't been turned into a book." Alright. Lin Muyu had already guessed that it would be like this. Then she sat beside Qin Yin, looked at the divine characters on the stone tablet and carefully studied them. Suddenly she felt the pressure on her soul increasing. As expected, the divine characters contained profound energy, which was different from ordinary characters. The divine characters that were assembled into a divine character already possessed the power of heaven and earth. Reading it required a lot of mental energy. However, this divine character, Earth Book, was recorded on this divine character. No matter how you looked at it, it felt awkward. It was the same divine character of the Law of Frost, but there were 8 keywords recorded in Fuxi's heavenly book, but there were only 4 words in this divine character. Moreover, this divine character was written with black gold powder, and there were even golden marks on it. Tang Xiaoxi said at the side, "Don't underestimate this divine character of Earth Book. It was written by a Heaven Knight level inscription master more than 5,000 years ago, and he used high-grade black gold powder. Unfortunately, the completed book is only divine character of Earth Book." Lin Muyu muttered to herself and slowly lowered her body. She reached out her hand to touch the divine character carved on the stone, and her heart suddenly lit up. Maybe there were other laws. However, the reason why this Heaven Knight level inscription master used such good materials to activate the power of heaven and earth, but it was only an Earth Book, could only mean that there was a problem with the words. It should be that the keywords were not in place, right? Thinking of this, Lin Muyu immediately took out Fuxi's heavenly book from her Chenkuan pouch, and directly placed it on the table beside Qin Yin. She flipped through the heavenly book page by page and reached out her hand to caress the ice element law. She said, "Xiaoxi, record this." Tang Xiaoxi hurriedly walked over and leaned over the table. Following Lin Muyu's dictation, she recorded down the 10 keywords of the ice element divine character: frost, penetrating cold, chilling intent, freezing, snowflake. Qin Yin widened her beautiful eyes, looked at Fuxi's heavenly book and asked, You can read in this wordless heavenly book? Are there no words?" Lin Muyu stared at Fuxi's heavenly book, which was full of divine characters, and asked. "Yes, not a single word." Qin Yin said, pouting. "Xiaoxi, can you see the words on the heavenly book?" "No." Tang Xiaoxi shook her head. "Not a single word." Lin Muyu clicked her tongue in wonder. Fuxi's heavenly book was indeed mysterious. Could it be that because she had unlocked the seal, she was the only one in the world who could see the words on the heavenly book? Therefore, after that, Lin Muyu dictated the inscription method recorded in Fuxi's heavenly book to Tang Xiaoxi so that the 2 girls could study it. Anyway, there was no need to keep this kind of thing to herself. Moreover, neither Qin Yin nor Tang Xiaoxi were outsiders. Studying the heavenly book should be of great benefit to their cultivation and cultivation. After a long time, Tang Xiaoxi took out a shield and said with a smile, "Mu, write another book for me and Xiaoxi to study?" Lin Muyu was stunned for a moment, then took the shield. When she took it, she found that Tang Xiaoxi's inscription pen was filled with low-grade dark gold powder. As expected of rich people, these 2 girls used the best materials. Therefore, she wrote a line of words on the shield: "Frost, the coldness from purgatory. The coldness devoured everything and froze everything in the world. The sky was filled with endless snowflakes and the ground was covered with icicles." However, the surroundings were silent. The golden dark gold powder seeped into the shield, but it did not activate any heaven and earth energy. "What's going on?" Tang Xiaoxi leaned against the shield and said quietly, "Did it fail?" Qin Yin also leaned close to Lin Muyu and carefully looked at the divine inscription on the shield and said, "Is it useless?" Lin Muyu was a little embarrassed and said, "It doesn't seem to be 100% success rate." He knew very well that this time, he did not activate the realm of the holy brush, Amaterasu. He did not even enter the state of mind of the law of ice. This was probably the biggest reason why he did not complete the book. Speaking of which, there should not be 100% success rate when inscribing a heavenly book. Otherwise, the heavenly book would not be valuable. Chapter 503. Late at night, in the backyard of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, the Ouyang residence was brightly lit. Inside the hall, the shield with the god-slaying seal was quietly placed on the table. Ouyang Ping gently rubbed the surface of the shield with his palm, feeling the powerful energy contained within the profound formation. "Father, did you discover anything?" Ouyang Long asked. Ouyang Ping opened his eyes, a pair of black pupils filled with coldness, and said, "Although the god-slaying seal is powerful, your husband has yet to comprehend even a star and a half of the mysteries of the heavenly book inscriptions." Ouyang Long was silent for a few seconds and said, "Perhaps I still need some time. With Father's profound knowledge, you should be able to comprehend it very soon, write a heavenly book, and take over the position of Heavenly Book Pavilion's manager from Ji Lin's hands." "That's natural, otherwise our 10 million Jining coins would have been spent in vain," Ouyang Bao said. Ouyang, who squinted his eyes at the side and said, "During tonight's banquet, Lin Muyu actually used a clumsy tool embryo and spirit powder to write a top-quality human book. It's really strange. I keep feeling that this person has too many secrets that we don't know. Father, do you think this god-slaying seal's tool embryo shield could be Lin Muyu's work? After all, we have not been able to find out when the Purple Flower Merchant Guild received the goods." "You're saying that Lin Muyu is a divine sealing master?" Ouyang Ping was startled and said, "Absolutely impossible. Not to mention that divine sealing masters need time to temper themselves. Just the god-slaying seal's illustrations have already been lost on the continent for 1,000 years. Even a sealing aristocratic family like the Wei family could not find the illustrations of the god-slaying seal and the divine governing seal, let alone Lin Muyu, who is obsessed with military power." Ouyang Bao said angrily, "I think so too. Lin Muyu was only able to write a top-quality human book by accident." Ouyang Long laughed. "Third brother seems to have no good impression of this Lin Muyu. Could it be because the Tang Xiaoxi that third brother likes also happens to like Lin Muyu?" Ouyang Bao instantly blushed and said, "Big brother, don't make fun of me." Ouyang Ping said lightly, "Bao, fighting for a moment is just a boorish man after all. You have to remember, calm your heart. If you can write a heavenly book grade inscription, you can enter the ranks of the Heavenly Book Pavilion's heavenly scholars. At that time, Father can also go to the Seven Seas King Tang Lan to propose for you. Tang Xiaoxi is a princess after all. You have to listen to the elders when it comes to marriage. Marrying Tang Xiaoxi as a heavenly scholar is what you should do. If you really like Tang Xiaoxi, work hard instead of being jealous." Ouyang Bao cupped his fists and said, "Yes, Father." Bao knows what to do. Ouyang Ping did not speak again. He placed his palm on the shield and immersed his mind into the powerful god-slaying seal again. At midnight it began to snow in the deep winter. This was the first snow in Lanyan City this winter. Huge snowflakes drifted down from the sky. Creak! The door of the rear hall of Zetian Palace was pushed open. There was a wisp of warmth inside, but it was cold outside. Lin Muyu tightened the belt of her cloak, blew a breath of hot air into her palm and said with a smile, "It's snowing." Qin Yin crossed her arms in front of her chest to ward off the cold, but it made her figure more exquisite and attractive. She said with a smile, "It's really snowing. It's so cold outside. Brother Yu, why don't you not go back to the camp tonight? You can sleep in Zetian Palace. There's an empty room next to my room. It's already prepared for you and Xiaoxi." "No need." Lin Muyu brushed off the snow on her shoulder and said, "The weather is not good tonight. I'm worried that there will be something that needs me in the camp. You and Xiaoxi should sleep early. I still have to be busy for a while." "Oh." Qin Yi nodded her head with some disappointment. The loneliness in her beautiful eyes made one feel sorry for her. Lin Muyu could not help but smile. She turned around and hugged Qin Yin. She kissed Qin Yin on the cheek and said, "Xiao Yin is now the emperor. You have to be strong. I can't stay by your side all the time. That's because I want to end the war as soon as possible. After the demon race and Iha country are destroyed, you can just give me a random title and I can marry you." "Really?" Qin Yin's pretty face was flushed. She was a little excited, but she did not dare to show it because of the reserved and shy nature of a young girl. She just nodded and said, "Then, are you really leaving tonight?" "Yes." "All right then." Qin Yin turned around and took out an umbrella from the rear hall. She handed it to him and said, "The snow is getting heavier. Be careful on the road." "Yes, don't worry. I'm leaving." "Yes." Opening the umbrella, Lin Muyu, dressed in white robes, disappeared into the curtain of snow. Only when his figure was completely out of sight did Qin Yin turn around and enter the room in Zetian Hall. She instructed, 20 people patrol at night." "Yes." Qin Yin cupped his fists outside and said, "This subordinate understands." Rustle, rustle, rustle. the cold wind blew against her face. Lin Muyu's boots stepped on the snow with every step. When she arrived outside of Zetian Hall, she discovered that Wei Chou and Bai Yin were waiting with 50 Longdan Army Camp cavalry in the resting hall. "Commander, you're out?" Wei Chou had a weathered face as he said with a smile, "I thought you would be resting in Zetian Hall tonight. Then Bai Yin and I will go back first." Lin Muyu glared at him and was actually speechless. She said, "Let's go back to the camp." "Yes." Everyone got on their horses and left the square of Zetian Hall in the blink of an eye, heading for Skyspan Street. It was late at night and there were not many people on the street. Only the sound of the cavalry's hooves could be heard in the wind and snow. Lin Muyu held Snow Trader's reins. King's fighting flames surrounded him. At this time, a few people in black robes slowly walked through the snowy night in the distance. The two parties brushed past each other. Not long after, Lin Muyu suddenly turned around and watched the figures of this group of people disappear from Skyspan Street. He could faintly feel a rather familiar aura through the spirit pulse art. He couldn't help but frown. "Commander, what's wrong?" Wei Chou asked. "Don't you feel that these people are a bit strange?" Lin Muyu said. Wei Chou narrowed his eyes and said, "Commander's words make me feel that something is wrong. These people are dressed very luxuriously, but they are actually not riding on horses or carriages. Moreover, they seem to be in a hurry. This doesn't make sense." Lin Muyu said, "Moreover, their bodies are brimming with a faint aura, the aura of the power of heaven and earth." "The power of heaven and earth?" Wei Chou was stunned. "Commander, what do you mean?" "These people have heavenly book weapon embryos on them." "What?" Wei Chou was shocked. "Didn't Her Highness the Empress already issue an edict? All heavenly book weapon embryos must be stored in the heavenly book pavilion, and personal carrying is prohibited?" "Yes." Lin Muyu took a deep breath and said, "Let's follow them. We can't get too close. Don't let them discover us." "Yes." In the snowy night, the howling of the cold wind in Lanyan City covered the sound of the horses' hooves. When Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, and the others followed the group of people to the north gate of Lanyan City, they saw the flickering torches in the distance. These people were chatting with the guards of the city. Not long after, the guard ordered the small gate to be opened and these people were released. "Go." Lin Muyu spurred her horse forward with Wei Chou and the others. Immediately, the guard and the group of imperial guards were shocked. When Lin Muyu lifted her cloak and revealed the commander's military insignia, the guard's face immediately turned ashen. "So it's... Commander, what's the matter?" "Get out of the way." Lin Muyu's eyes were cold as she shouted, "We want to leave the city." "But Commander, dang." The star's sword was unsheathed, and the king's fighting flame lingered around the blade. Lin Muyu said coldly, "Get out of the way or die." "Yes, open the door." The small door opened again, and Lin Muyu led the 50 elites of the Longdan army camp out. However, the 7 or 8 people did not walk on the main road. Instead, they directly entered the forest on the side of the road. Lin Muyu followed the energy waves from the spiritual pulse technique and chased after them. Soon she found traces of these people. "Go capture them." Wei Chou shouted loudly. "I want them alive." The few people in the snow also noticed the pursuers and quickly turned around. One of them roared angrily, "Damn it, it's this group of dogs of the Empire again. Kill them for me. Bastards." They all pulled out their swords. Lin Muyu jumped off her horse and stepped on the whirling cold wind. The pressure of the Holy King Realm expert instantly descended, causing the 2 men in black at the front to kneel on the ground and lose the ability to resist. However, the people at the back were not crushed by the pressure of the Holy Realm. The surface of their bodies glowed with a faint yellow light, resisting the pressure of the Holy Realm. They had the Earth Book on them. "Everyone be careful," Lin Muyu shouted. She had already swung her cosmic sword at the person at the front. Under the light of the cosmic sword, the person's face turned pale. He pulled out a saber from his waist. The faint golden divine runes on the saber soared into the sky. He shouted angrily, "Since we can't escape, we'll kill as many as we can. Come on, fire." A ray of light suddenly fell on his saber from the sky. The force of heaven and earth was activated. Judging from the intensity of the light, it was a mid-grade earth book of the law of fire. Boom. Flames fell from the sky and instantly swept over a radius of nearly 100 meters. Lin Muyu was the first to bear the brunt of the attack. She opened her hand and summoned a gourd wall with a radius of several meters to protect herself. However, the group of Longdan army camp soldiers behind her screamed in pain. Most of them were affected by the power of the Earth Book. "Bastard!" Lin Muyu was exasperated. Her figure flashed past and a head flew into the air. Right in front of her, another man in black raised a broadsword. He was also activating the power of the heavenly book. Moreover, it was also an earthy yellow earth book. It was a low-grade earth book. However, just before the force of heaven and earth was activated, Lin Muyu used falling star steps to kill him. She swung her cosmic sword and cut off the man's arm. The light of the sword danced wildly. The rest of the people were killed before they could activate the power of the heavenly book. Behind them, among the dozens of Longdan army camp soldiers that Lin Muyu had brought with her, the ones with lower cultivation were burned to ashes. On the other hand, Baiyin, Weiqiu, and the others with higher cultivation had only expended a lot of combat energy to resist the impact of the mid-grade earth book. Search for all the embryos of the heavenly book, Lin Muyu said calmly. Inform the Imperial Guard commander Feng Jixing to bring his men here. Yes. Chapter 504. The cold wind blew at the torches, causing them to flutter. The forest had already been completely surrounded by the Imperial army. Feng Jixing looked at the corpses of the Longdan army camp soldiers and frowned. He was so angry that the veins on his face were bulging. Zhang Wei, who was on duty tonight? Zhang Wei cupped his fists. The centurion of the 4th Legion's 7th Battalion, Lu Daran. Milord, he accepted 3,000 gold notes, so he secretly opened the side gate and let these people leave the city. Execute Lu Daran. All the Imperial Army soldiers under him will be fined 3 months of salary. Yes. On the side, Weiqiu and Baiyin were holding trays filled with weapon embryos. There were swords, sabers, shields, bracers, metal boots, and so on. Lin Muyu checked the injuries of the injured soldiers and stood up to say to Chu Yao, Sister Chu Yao, I'll leave these soldiers to you. You must save them. Try not to lose an arm or a leg. Otherwise they'll be crippled. Amen. Chu Yao's beautiful face showed a trace of fatigue. She had already treated 7 soldiers who were seriously injured. Lin Muyu squeezed her hand with heartache. It's been hard on you, it's fine. Chu Yao faintly smiled. I am the Spirit Medicine Division's great deacon. This is originally my duty. Ayu, go take care of your own matters. Come see me in a bit. Amen. Lin Muyu turned and went to Feng Jixing. Meanwhile, Feng Jixing looked at the embryos in silence. How is it? Feng Jixing asked. Lin Muyu frowned. 17 people died in the Longdan army camp, and 21 are seriously injured. A mid-grade earth tome caused us to lose so many people. How hateful. Feng Jixing patted his shoulder and said, You calm down first and quell your anger. This matter must be investigated from the beginning. What's there to investigate? Lin Muyu said, The weapons in their hands are all weapons and shields produced in Lanyan City, and they call us the Empire's dogs. It's obvious that they are from the Iha Kingdom. How many people in the world can write a middle-grade earth book? Other than the clan heads of a few aristocratic families in the Heavenly Tome Pavilion, I'm afraid there's no one else. Weiqiu cupped his fists and said, General Feng, these aristocratic families sold the powerful spiritual tomes and tomes of the earth to the rebels of Iha Nation. This is clearly an act of treason. General Feng, please investigate the Heavenly Book Pavilion thoroughly. Heavenly Book Pavilion? Feng Jixing clenched his fists and sighed. I'll investigate thoroughly, but we can't be too hasty. The Heavenly Book Pavilion is too sensitive. If we make a big fuss, I'm afraid we'll lose many talents. This is also something that Your Highness doesn't want to see. So my people died in vain? Lin Muyu said in a low voice, Brother Feng, if you're not going to investigate, I'll do it myself. Don't be rash. I'm not being rash. It's just that we can't tolerate traitors. Lin Muyu gritted her teeth and said, I don't care which of the 4 aristocratic families sold the Heavenly Book to the Iha Kingdom. As long as I find out who did it, I'll definitely teach them a lesson. Feng Jixing asked, Then what do you plan to do? Lin Muyu immediately ordered, Weiqiu, return to the camp immediately and mobilize the 1st Legion's 10,000 iron cavalrymen. Surround the Heavenly Book Pavilion at night. Prepare the arrow boxes and crossbows. If they want to use the Heavenly Book to resist, shoot them to death. Weiqiu flipped over and mounted his horse. I'll do it right away. Looking at Weiqiu's disappearing figure, Feng Jixing's face was ashen. He said, The Heavenly Book Pavilion is guarded by 5,000 Imperial Guards. Are you going to attack them? Then just withdraw 5,000 Imperial Guards. I'm going to investigate the Heavenly Book Pavilion at night. Brother Feng, you can come with me. I believe that the aristocratic families in the Heavenly Book Pavilion won't dare to act recklessly. All right. Feng Jixing nodded and asked, Do we need to go to Her Highness to ask for an edict? No need. Xiaoyin is asleep. Let her have a good sleep. Everything happened so suddenly. Let's make a decision first. All right, let's go. Late at night, the sound of horse hooves could be heard on the streets of the imperial capital. The snow was getting heavier. Countless soldiers from the Dragon Courage Legion appeared around the Heavenly Book Pavilion with torches connected together. From afar, the soldiers from the Longdan army camp drew their bows and aimed at the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Any slight movement would cause a massacre. Bang! With a heavy kick, Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion side by side. Behind them, the densely packed soldiers from the Longdan army camp quickly surrounded the courtyard of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. Their swords were unsheathed, and rows of sword lights shone coldly under the illumination of the torches. Who's there? Inside the Heavenly Book Pavilion, a group of Imperial guards rushed over with their weapons. However, they saw Feng Jixing's determined face. All Imperial guards withdraw. Feng Jixing raised his commander's token and ordered. Yes, Commander. The 5,000 Imperial guards left the Heavenly Book Pavilion in the blink of an eye. However, the steward and the others in the Heavenly Book Pavilion were all alarmed. Ji Lin, who was wearing a white robe, walked over with Ji Shang and the others. Soon after, the people from the Lu residence, Ouyang residence, and Prince Zhong residence also appeared in the plaza. The snow was heavy, but no one was sleepy. Looking at the countless Dragon Courage Legion soldiers with their swords drawn, they knew that something big must have happened. Ji Lin quickly walked forward and cupped his fists respectfully. Marquis Yun Ling, Marquis Yun Zhong, the two marquises came to the Heavenly Book Pavilion in the middle of the night. I wonder what happened. Lin Muyu took a saber embryo from Wei Chao's hands and said, the middle grade earth book on this embryo came from the Heavenly Book Pavilion, right? Ji Lin was stunned. Isn't this a six-ringed saber? Why is it in the hands of Marquis Yun Ling? I will have to ask you this. Lin Muyu said indifferently. Her Highness the Empress had already ordered that all of the embryos in the Heavenly Book Pavilion must be stored in the warehouse and wait for the Ministry of War's deployment. However, these dozen or so embryos with spirit books and earth books inscribed on them appeared in the hands of a group of Iha Nation rebels. Steward Ji Lin, do you know what happened? As he spoke, he slowly raised the six-ringed saber. The light on it dimmed. After activating the power of heaven and earth once, the earth book needed around 10 days to recover its spiritual power. Furthermore, an earth book could only be used 5 times in a lifetime. Although the spiritual power on this six-ringed saber was dim, one could still see the earthy yellow color of the power of heaven and earth. It was undoubtedly the earth book. Lin Muyu said in a low voice, this middle-grade earth book was activated and killed a total of 17 people from the Dragon Courage Legion. Who should I find to settle these 17 lives? Ji Lin's body trembled. Only now did he realize the seriousness of the situation. He hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Commander Yu, I don't know anything about this, but this six-ringed saber did come from this old man. I will definitely investigate this matter. There's no need. Feng Jixing stepped forward and said indifferently, we are here today to investigate this matter. Guards, who is the person who stored the Heavenly Book? Bring him here. In the crowd, a short and fat man scrambled forward and said, Lord Commanders, I really have nothing to do with this matter. I am only responsible for storing the artifact embryos in the warehouse. I don't know anything else. Take out the inventory. Lin Muyu said. Yes. He quickly took out an account book. Lin Muyu glanced at it. In the past half a month, the Heavenly Book Pavilion had stored a total of 14 local books, 71 spiritual books, and 224 personal books. She quickly found the fire-type middle-grade earth book embryo in the earth book's inventory. There was no doubt that it was the six-ringed saber, but there was only the inventory record. Why did the embryos disappear without a trace? Lin Muyu asked coldly. The fatty repeatedly kowtowed on the ground. I don't know. Don't know? Lin Muyu could not help but laugh. Guards, drag this fatty away and behead him. I want to see if he knows. Yes. 2 soldiers from the Longdan army camp stepped forward and grabbed the fatty's arms. Suddenly, the fatty's face turned green. He had never seen such a scene. His pants were instantly wet. He knelt on the ground with a pale face and begged for mercy. Commander Yu, I know. Just last night, the chief of the Ji residence, Lord Ji Zhao, went to the warehouse and took a batch of weapon embryos. I didn't dare to ask too much. Ji Zhao? Feng Jixing's expression turned cold. Where is Ji Zhao? Come out. Among the crowd, a man with a pale face slowly walked out and knelt on the ground. He was wearing a luxurious leather robe and his hair had already turned white. He smiled at Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing and said, "Don't investigate anymore. I did it. I sold the 9 spiritual books and 3 local books just to get some money to spend." Lin Muyu could not help but laugh. "Some money? How much did you get for these weapon embryos?" "They are all here." Ji Zhao took out a pile of gold notes from his pocket and threw them into the snow. They were all 100,000 gold notes each. From the looks of it, there were at least 10 million gold notes. Yihe country was really rich. They were actually willing to spend so much money on these heavenly books. On the side, Ji Lin's face was pale. He cupped his hands and bowed to Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing. "Commanders, Ji Zhao is this old man's cousin. He has been loyal to the empire for many years. I hope that the 2 commanders can let him go. This old man only has this one cousin." Lin Muyu went forward to help Ji Lin up and said, "Lord Steward, this matter has nothing to do with you. You don't have to plead for him. General Feng and I will handle this properly and hand Ji Zhao over to the Empress. I hope you can supervise the Heavenly Book Pavilion in the future and don't let this kind of thing happen again." "Yes. Thank you, Commander Yu." Ji Lin looked sad. Ji Zhao and the gold notes were handed over to the people of the Fire Sparrow Division and then handed over to the Empress. The snow was getting heavier and heavier, making a rustling sound as it landed on the cloak. Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing led their horses and walked on the streets of Zetian Palace. Is this the end of this matter?" Feng Jixing asked. "Yes." Lin Muyu nodded, wanting to say something but hesitating. Feng Jixing laughed. "You should be able to see it too, yes." Lin Muyu said in a low voice, "If it wasn't for Ji Lin's support, Ji Zhao wouldn't have done such a big thing. However, the Empire needs people like Ji Lin to take charge of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, so we can only turn a blind eye. This time we punished Ji Zhao as a warning to the Heavenly Book Pavilion." "Yes." Feng Jixing nodded heavily. Unknowingly, a few years had passed. Feng Jixing had witnessed Lin Muyu's growth. From a silly boy who only knew how to use brute force to the swift and decisive commander of the Dragon Courage Legion, Lin Muyu was gradually transforming into a true famous general of the Empire. Chapter 505. The next day, Qin Yin ordered Ji Zhao to be put under house arrest for 20 years as punishment. In addition, the Heavenly Book Pavilion's manager, Ji Lin, was fined 6 months' salary for his incompetence. The 3 deputy managers, Qin Yong, Ouyang Ping and Lu Yen, were all fined 3 months' salary. She also ordered Su Yu, the commander of the Qin Dragon Army, to go to the Heavenly Book Pavilion every 7 days to supervise the collection of heavenly tomes. It was also because of this small incident that Qin Yin, the Empress, gained a lot of control over the Heavenly Book Pavilion. In the afternoon in the Longdan army camp, Lin Muyu placed the tool embryos one by one. He then took out his spiritual pen and opened the Fuxi Heavenly Book to the side. He began to study the other 7 divine texts. Among them, the one that interested him the most was the Heavenly Book of the Law of Life. The Fuxi Heavenly Book also recorded a series of keywords regarding the recovery of life. There were even some oracle bone inscriptions that Lin Muyu did not recognize. He had to study them carefully. Life XXXXX, warm current, green XXXXX, melt XXXXX, recovery XXXX. It was conceivable that if he could write a high-level heavenly book of the law of life and use it in the casualty barracks during times of war, it would save a lot of manpower. Thus, he began to trace the outline of the divine text and studied it step by step. The spiritual pen was filled with mystic copper powder and he wrote the divine text on an exquisite shield. The mystic copper powder slowly seeped into the shield and produced a trace of dark force. Lin Muyu held the spiritual pen in his hand and felt a giant pen descending from the sky in his eye. The golden light exploded. He had already entered the realm of the holy pen Amaterasu. However, after writing all the divine text, he did not enter any state of mind. This tool embryo could be considered broken. After writing 7 or 8 shields consecutively, his arm unconsciously became sore. Writing divine text was very exhausting. At this moment there was a knock on the door. Bai Yin said from outside, "Commander, Sir Qin Xiling from the weapon department of the Dragon Courage Army has sent someone to invite you to the mountain. He said that there has been progress in the research of the magic crystal cannon." "All right." In her excitement, Lin Muyu immediately threw away the shield in her hand and put on her armor. She led Bai Yin, Wei Chou, and nearly 100 light cavalrymen of the Valiant Dragon Legion out of the city, heading straight for the mountain. Half of the mountain was about 5 kilometers away from Lanyan City. Because the magic crystal cannon was a secret research project, it couldn't be known by others. Moreover, it was extremely powerful, so Qin Xiling moved the research site to the foot of the mountain. When Lin Muyu and the others arrived, they saw a group of soldiers from the Longdan army camp patrolling from afar. The research site was under martial law and normal people couldn't get close. Of course, as the commander of the Valiant Dragon Legion, Lin Muyu naturally went straight in. At the foot of the mountain, the withered grass had been trampled out of shape. The surrounding snow had not melted yet, but Lin Muyu could see Qin Xiling sweating profusely as he adjusted a black heavy cannon with a group of technical officials from the Ministry of Works. When she saw the heavy cannon, Lin Muyu could not help but be dumbfounded. The cannon barrel was at least 10 meters long, and the cannon base was even bigger, comparable to 3 or 4 armored vehicles. Could this big guy really be used? Lord Commander is here. An official reminded. Qin Xiling hastily turned around and saluted, saying, "The magic crystal cannon is starting to show results." Lin Muyu asked with a smile, "What kind of progress?" "You will know when you see it." Qin Xiling picked up a small red flag, pointed it at the mountain range in the distance and said, "Aim straight ahead, fill the cannon." Yes. A few soldiers from the Longdan army camp carried a black ball and filled it into the cannon. Then they filled in a round object made of black beach powder, and with a dang sound the cannon was closed. Lin Muyu couldn't help being speechless. The principle of this double kick was too simple and crude. However, from the looks of it, it must have taken a lot of effort to forge this huge cannon. In this era where technology wasn't developed, it was already very rare to be able to do this. In the entire continent, probably only someone like Qin Xiling could make this kind of weapon. "Prepare the fire." Qin Xiling raised his arm. Yes. A soldier picked up a torch. "Fire release." When the torch got close to the fuse on the cannon, it immediately ignited with a hua-la sound. Lin Muyu couldn't help but jump and unconsciously took a step back, as if she was afraid that this huge cannon would explode. Qin Xiling saw this and said, "Don't worry, even though the cannon exploded twice, it was because it was overheated. It won't happen again now." At this time, with a ping sound, the black beach powder ball inside the cannon exploded. With a strong propelling force, the magic crystal cannon with the storage crystal was sent out. The magic crystal was completely wrapped in the metal ball and directly flew into the distance. The purple lightning power in the storage crystal was faintly visible, but it was clearly not enough to detonate the magic crystal cannon. With a ping sound, the magic crystal cannon fell among the rocks at the foot of the mountain and rolled more than 10 meters away, but it didn't move at all. "What's going on? Is it a squib?" Lin Muyu asked. Qin Xiling shook his head. "No, let's wait a little longer." After a full 10 seconds, the energy around the magic crystal cannon kept jumping. Finally, with a ping sound, it directly erupted into a mushroom cloud that soared into the sky. The biting cold energy shockwave reached nearly 100 meters, destroying the rocks and plants as if they were dry weeds and rotten wood. The resulting shockwave came head-on, blowing the cloaks of Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Bai Yin and the other generals. Such a strong destructive power. Wei Chou was dumbstruck. Bai Yin also stood there dumbstruck, muttering, "Such a strong weapon. What are we still cultivating for? With these weapons we can already unify the continent." Qin Xiling smiled with gratification. "It exploded? No, it's still not enough." Lin Muyu shook her head. "The explosion time is too long. It took so long for it to explode. I'm afraid that people with slightly higher cultivation would be able to quickly move out of the radius of the explosion. The power is indeed enough. Moreover, this magic crystal cannon doesn't have any calibrations at all. The accuracy of the cannon is equal to 0, and the killing power is negligible." Qin Xiling couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. He cupped his fists and said, "Milord, this subordinate has really tried his best. What Milord has said, Xiling has already thought of it, but it's too difficult. Even if Milord gave us the blueprints, we still have to study it for many days and nights before we can improve it once. The explosion time can be shortened by increasing the purity of the storage crystal. As for calibration, Xiling still needs to continue studying the trajectory of the magic crystal cannon before we can improve it." Lin Muyu patted Qin Xiling's shoulder and said with a smile, "As for the magic crystal cannon project, I'll completely rely on Xiling. As long as you can improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it can be used in battle, you will be the #1 hero of the Qin Empire, even more outstanding than the contributions of commanders like me and Big Brother Feng. Moreover, I promise you, as long as you can improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it can be used in battle, I'll go to Her Highness Yen Yin and ask her to confer you the title of Duke. Even conferring you the title of king is not a difficult matter. After all, you have the Qin bloodline. Qin Ziling's face was full of surprise. Really, my lord? When have I ever lied to you? Lin Muyu laughed loudly. However, the research of the magic crystal cannon must be carried out in secret, especially the blueprints and so on. We can't let outsiders know, understand? Yes, the research of the magic crystal cannon has always been carried out in secret. Don't worry. Qin Ziling laughed and said, "This afternoon the valiant Dragon Legion scouts hunted some wild rabbits halfway up the mountain. I ordered people to stew them in a soup pot. Since my lord has come, let's eat dinner together? Okay." As a result, they stayed at the magic crystal cannon research base to eat dinner. When night fell, Qin Ziling ordered a thick cloth to cover the entire fort, and then cooked a pot of rabbit meat in the camp. Lin Muyu, Wei Chou, Baiyin, and the others sat around the table drinking wine and eating meat without a problem. When they were half full, Qin Ziling cupped his fists and said, "My lord, the research funds for the magic crystal cannon are almost used up. The iron we use to smelt the magic crystal cannon is the hardest 1,000-year profound iron. Normal iron cannot withstand the high temperature when the cannon is fired, and there are many failures, so the expenditure is very large." "And I understand." Lin Muyu nodded. The magic crystal cannon was developed in secret and hadn't been approved by the Ministry of Revenue. This meant that Lin Muyu had to fork out the funds himself. However, he was willing. After all, doomsday weapon technology like the magic crystal cannon couldn't fall into the hands of Tang Lan, Su Muyun, or the hands of the demon race or the Yihe nation. He had to be careful. Opening the universe bag, Lin Muyu took out a thick pile of gold notes. Each note was worth 100,000 gold coins, the 10 million gold coins from selling the god-slaying seal. She slowly placed the 100 gold notes on the table and said solemnly, "This money can only be used for the research of the magic crystal cannon. Ziling, do you understand?" Qin Ziling nodded heavily and said, "Don't worry, my lord, I won't touch a single copper coin. I'll directly hand it to the valiant Dragon Legion's secretary for registration. Every expenditure will be recorded in detail, my lord can be at ease." "And I trust you." After handing over the 10 million gold coins, Lin Muyu sighed. She didn't even have the mood to drink anymore. Her headache now was how to get more money to research the magic crystal cannon. From the looks of it, if she wanted to improve the magic crystal cannon to the point where it could be used on the battlefield, she would have to spend at least 100 million gold coins. Even if she succeeded in improving the magic crystal cannon, she would still need a large sum of money to continue smelting more magic crystal cannons. Conservatively speaking, she would need to spend at least 200 million gold coins to make the magic crystal cannon technology dominate the entire continent. However, if she could really unify the continent, what was 200 million gold coins? Chapter 506. In the Green Valley, birds flew and butterflies danced. It was a scene of beauty. Dense horse hooves spread out from the valley. Numerous human armies gathered and moved slowly. A battle of over 100,000 people was about to begin. Attack! The general at the front pulled out his long sword and roared at the sky. The sound of horse hooves became intense. The cavalry attacked while the infantry pushed forward. In a blink of an eye, the valley was drowned in blood and killing. Shouts surged into the sky as the two armies clashed. Just as the battle was in full swing, a person in the battle formation suddenly raised a long sword high up. The golden divine characters on the blade of the sword released a dense indigo light that soared into the sky. This was the power of heaven and earth triggered by a high-grade heavenly tome. In the next moment, numerous hurricanes formed in the air, turning into sharp blades that sliced the enemy cavalry. Within a few hundred meters, screams could be heard. Even the heavy armor was unable to block that sharp storm. One after another, more and more battle generals activated the power of the heavenly tomes. One by one, the earthly tomes, the heavenly tomes, and even the divine tomes were leading this battle. The canyon was already filled with blood. Magic crystal cannons, prepare. On the mountain range, bushes and branches were moved away, revealing the pitch-black cannons below. In the next moment, bang 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 sounds rang out incessantly, and purple mushroom clouds erupted in the battle. Countless pitiful soldiers were torn to shreds by the power of the magic crystal cannons, and some soldiers were even directly burned to ashes, turning into dust that fell to the ground. Ah! Lin Muyu woke up. So it was a dream, but the killing scenes in the dream were so real. I rubbed my temples. I had drunk too much last night, otherwise I wouldn't have had such a nightmare. This dream was just too real, so real that it felt like it was really happening. Moreover, Lin Muyu knew that once the magic crystal cannons were completed, along with the appearance of magic crystal cannons and the appearance of high-grade heaven books, the dominance of martial arts would be challenged. Even God Realm experts wouldn't be able to protect themselves from the terrifying power of the magic crystal explosion. That might not be the case. He got up and washed up. What he had to do in the morning was simple. He continued to study the heavenly book. Lin Muyu took out a thin sword and started writing on it. His spiritual sense slowly seeped into the sword and he relaxed his body. Naturally, he entered the realm of the holy brush, Amaterasu. This time he used dark silver powder as the material. Silver runes slowly appeared on the sword, flames from the endless purgatory. Heavenly flames descended from the heavens, burning away all the darkness, dancing with endless destruction, flames devouring the heavens. In the blink of an eye, when Lin Muyu finished writing the last rune, the image of a sky full of raging flames suddenly appeared in her mind with a buzz. Being in the middle of it, she felt the boundless heat and destruction. The law of fire was the most destructive and destructive law of the 8 great laws. She could feel the searing pain very vividly. The state of mind had already appeared. Whoosh! A ray of light shot into the sky. It was an orange ray of light. Spirit book. And judging from the intensity of the color, it should be a middle-grade spiritual book. Lin Muyu was overjoyed. Finally, he could become a book again. At this time, the sword in his hand was no longer an ordinary sword. It was a sword with a middle-grade spiritual book in it. A middle-grade spiritual book could be activated 7 times in a lifetime. Each time it was activated, it needed about 7 days to recover its spiritual energy. It was stronger than the human book but weaker than the earth book. Overall, it was already very good. At the same time, the moment the book was completed, Lin Muyu felt that the battle energy in his body was greatly depleted. Although the heavenly book used the power of heaven and earth, it had to be guided by the strength of the inscriber. Therefore, inscribing a heavenly book was not only a mental task, but also a physical one. Lin Muyu sat cross-legged as strands of Fushi's divine power slowly circulated around his body. He was using the heavenly book's mental cultivation method to modify the purity of the spiritual energy in his body. The incomplete scroll of the dragon forging bone tempered one's bloodline and battle energy. Now that Lin Muyu had stepped into the Holy King realm and had achieved the initial success of the Divine Legacy realm, he could be considered to have reached the peak of cultivation among his peers. According to the Fushi Heavenly Book's mental cultivation method, he did not use the king's battle flame but the spiritual energy in his body to write the heavenly book. The more vigorous and pure the spiritual energy, the higher the probability of activating the power of heaven and earth. This was the true meaning of Fushi's heavenly book. On the contrary, Fushi's heavenly book only gave the basic rules of the heavenly book's divine text. As for the specific divine text, it did not mention a single word. Just as Lin Muyu was practicing the heavenly book's mental cultivation method, the strand of Fushi's divine power in his body seemed to be attracted and lingered around the mental cultivation method's spiritual energy as if it was protecting him. Lin Muyu could not help but be stunned. Could it be that Fushi's divine power and the heavenly book's mental cultivation method were of the same origin? So, if he used Fushi's divine power to write the heavenly book, what would the effect be? When he thought of this, he could no longer sit still. He quickly went to the table and took out a steel longsword. A row of heavenly book runes of the law of life flashed across his mind. Golden strands of Fushi's divine power enshrouded his fingers. His mind wandered and he quickly wrote down a rune, life. The warm current from the firmament heaven realm, the green rebirth of all things, melting the world of ice and snow, the endless power brings the revival of life, saving the dying and healing the injured. The holy pen's Amaterasu state had appeared. The state of mind had also appeared. Lin Muyu's spiritual sense was immersed in a flourishing brocade. The heaven and earth were filled with the power of life. Lush plants were growing healthily and birds were flying in the sky. The endless power of life spread rapidly between the heaven and earth, dyeing the desert and the Gobi Desert with layers of green. Today was the second time he had completed a book. Swoosh! A ray of earthy yellow light shot up from the steel sword and directly shot through the main hall and into the 9 heavens. He did not know if others could see it. Moreover, according to the intensity of the light, the color was relatively dim. It should be a low-grade earthly book. This was enough. It was the earthly book, a realm that many heavenly books inscribers could not pursue in their entire lives. Buzz buzz. The divine runes on the steel sword glowed faintly and slowly enshrouded. Lin Muyu was extremely excited. This was an earthly book. No, he could not hold it in anymore. He had to see the power of this earthly book of the law of life. He quickly walked out of the room. Outside the cold wind was blowing. It was the middle of winter. Everything in the courtyard had withered. The flowers and plants in the pots had long died. Not far away, an old banyan tree had also lost all its leaves. Its withered branches swayed slowly in the wind. There was no one around. Lin Muyu could not help but secretly laugh. With a light flip of his palm, the king's combat flame surged into the blade. With a single thought, the embryo of the earthly book was activated. In an instant, a green light shot up into the sky. Endless life energy surged in the surroundings. In the next moment, a miraculous scene occurred. The withered wood sprouted, and the hissing sound of growth could be heard. Moreover, the withered flowers and plants in the flower pots also slowly took root and pulled out their teeth. In an instant, they had grown into pots of beautiful flowers. The banyan tree also grew up gracefully. The entire courtyard was like spring, overflowing with the air of spring. It was a stark contrast to the cold winter outside. Oh my God, Lin Muyu was dumbfounded. How mysterious was the power of the earthly book. It could actually bring everything back to life. If this courtyard was filled with wounded soldiers, wouldn't their wounds heal as quickly as the flowers and plants? Too amazing. Looking down, the divine characters on the blade slowly dimmed. After the earthly book was written, it could be activated 5 times in its lifetime. This sword had already been used once, so there were still 4 more times. It would take around 10 days for it to completely recover the power of heaven and earth. Lin Muyu's heart was filled with joy. At this time, Wei Chou pushed open the door and entered. Seeing the green in the courtyard, his face turned green. Oh my God, what is going on? Lin Muyu raised the sword in her hand. The law of life. This is the embryo of the earthly book. Wei Chou was shocked. Commander, you can write the earthly book? Yes, it's not simple, right? Wei Chou's face was filled with ecstasy. It's not just not simple, there aren't many people in the entire Dragon's Courage army that can write a heavenly book, but the commander can actually write an earth book. I'm afraid that if the people in the heavenly book pavilion knew about this, they would be angered to death. Not only is commander's martial arts cultivation far above theirs, but even your comprehension of the heavenly book inscriptions is far above theirs. Alright, why are you here? Her Highness Yin has summoned you. She said that it's about how to handle Ji Zhao's 10 million Jining coins. Lin Muyu smiled happily. It seems that Xiao Yin is planning to give me some benefits. Then Commander, let's hurry over. Wei Chou beamed. Okay, let's go. Lin Muyu placed the freshly made embryo of the earthly book into her Chengkuan bag. Riding on Takshu, she brought Wei Chou, Bai Yin and the others to Zetian Palace. At the square outside Zetian Palace, she saw another group of people. They were the people from the Lu residence in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. The 3 siblings Lu Heng, Lu Feng and Lu Ying were all there. Lu Feng was holding a long brocade box in his hand. There must be some treasure in it. Lin Muyu used the spiritual pulse technique to explore from afar. She found that the item in the brocade box was emitting a faint power of heaven and earth. It seemed to be a finished embryo. Commander Yu, you've come to Zetian Palace too? When Lu Ying saw Lin Muyu, her face was instantly filled with a happy smile. She was like a little girl who had a crush on her. She was shy, but she could not help but greet her. Lu Heng and Lu Feng were instantly displeased. However, Lu Ying was the apple of their father's eye, and she might not be willing to listen to her 2 brothers. Lin Muyu nodded and smiled. Her Highness has summoned me. Oh yes, why are the people from the Lu residence here at Zetian Palace? Lu Ying beamed with joy. Second brother just finished writing a middle-grade earthly book this morning. It's a book about the law of light. He also heard that your Highness practices the law of light martial soul, so he specially came to present this middle-grade earthly book to you. I see. Lin Muyu smiled faintly and said, let's go in. Okay. Lu Ying was simple-minded and would not think of so many complicated relationships. Lu Feng was a natural genius. His innate talent in heavenly book inscriptions could be said to be the best in the empire. Furthermore, he had an elegant demeanor and had long been favored by the noble ladies in Lanyan City. However, the only person that Lu Feng seemed to be in love with was the Empress, Qinin. Although Lin Muyu was very confident that he would not lose to Lu Feng in terms of talent or martial arts, he was still somewhat uncomfortable when someone else coveted his girl. Wei Chou followed closely behind Lin Muyu with his hand on the hilt of his sword. He was only 5 meters away from Lu Feng. With such a short distance, Wei Chou was confident that he could pierce Lu Feng's throat in half a second before he could activate any heavenly book. However, Lin Muyu looked back at him with a slight reproach in his eyes. He could already see a trace of killing intent in Wei Chou. Wei Chou was also helpless. He grinned and removed his hand from the hilt of his sword. Chapter 507. The interior of Zetian Palace was brightly lit. Many people were present, including Tang Lan, Su Muyun, Xiang Yu and Feng Jixing. Marquis Yun Ling requests an audience. The official outside the palace shouted. Lu Heng, Lu Feng and Lu Ying from the Lu residence request an audience. Lin Muyu strode in and stood beside Feng Jixing. The rules of the empire were that the civil officials stood in one row and the generals stood in the other. Lin Muyu, Feng Jixing and Xiang Yu had the highest status in the empire, so she stood between Feng Jixing and Xiang Yu. Commander Yu is here. Qin Yin stood up and said with a smile. Ji Zhao colluded with the Yihe kingdom and sold many heavenly tomes inscription tool embryos to the Yihe kingdom. Thanks to Commander Yu's capture, the empire was able to avoid the risk of losing these heavenly tomes. However, the 10 million Jinin coins that Ji Zhao obtained is still here. On account of the Dragon's Courage Legion's meritorious service in capturing and investigating Ji Zhao and the fact that many of their men died in battle, I have decided to give these 10 million Jinin coins to Lin Muyu and the Dragon's Courage Legion as a reward. I hope everyone in the empire will be like Commander Yu and put the empire's interests first. Everyone was taken aback. Everyone knew that the empress was biased towards Lin Muyu, but it was too blatant of her favoritism. Tang Lan hurriedly cupped her fists and bowed. Your Highness, please reconsider. 10 million Jinin dollars isn't a small amount. Furthermore, the treasury is empty and needs Jinin dollars for everything. If you give all of it to the Brave Dragon Legion, I'm afraid the other commanders will be dissatisfied. Instantly, many of the Tang family's commanders cupped their fists to express their dissatisfaction. Su Muyun also frowned but didn't say anything. He had basically stopped interfering with Qin Yin's decisions in the imperial court. After all, with people like Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing around, there was no use even if he interfered. Qin Yin pondered for a moment and said with a smile, Your Highness 7C King is right. I shall bestow 9,900,000 Jinin coins to the valiant Dragon Legion. Take 100,000 and distribute it to the commanders of the legions as a reward for their loyalty. Tang Lan. Qin Yin held onto the hilt of the heaven-suppressing sword and smiled. There's no need to discuss this anymore. I've made up my mind. Yes, Your Highness. Tang Lan didn't have anything else to say. Even though he and Qin Yin were both addressed respectfully as Your Highness, the weight of these two highnesses was obviously not the same. After the battle at Wildfire Plains, Qin Yin continuously promoted her trusted generals and civilian officials. Now, most of the officials in power in the 6 ministries were the Empress's people. Tang Lan's authority was also decreasing day by day, and naturally he couldn't use force anymore. Step by step, Lin Muyu walked to the king's step and respectfully took the 99 gold notes from Shengguan Jinyue's hands. The Longdan army camp needed money, so he would not be polite with this money. At this moment, the 3 siblings Lu Heng, Lu Feng and Lu Ying entered the main hall. Qin Yin smiled faintly. May I know what the 3 siblings of the Lu residence have for me? Lu Heng cupped his fists and said, Reporting to Your Highness, my second brother Lu Feng wrote a medium-grade book of the Law of Light this morning. I also heard that Your Highness cultivates a martial soul of the Law of Light, so this book is perfect for Your Highness's cultivation. Only in Your Highness's hands will it be able to display its greatest power. My second brother wants to present this book to Your Highness. Oh, is that so? Qin Yin's gaze was gentle as she said, Young Master Lu Feng is able to write a medium-grade book at such a young age. It's truly worthy of celebration. Guards, accept the book. Yes. Shengguan Jingyue walked forward and took the brocade box. As if she understood Qin Yin's intention, she actually didn't have any intention of opening the brocade box. She held the brocade box and was about to hand it over to the Imperial Guard. Lu Feng stared blankly and was filled with disappointment. He hurriedly said, Your Highness, Young Master Lu Feng, is there something else? Qin Yin calmly looked at him. Your Highness. Lu Feng said, Could it be that Your Highness doesn't want to see what the tool embryo is? This subject stayed up all night and chose the most exquisite tool embryo to carve this medium-grade book. Is that so? Qin Yin faintly smiled. Jingyue, open it and take a look. Yes. Shengguan Jingyue opened the brocade box and shock flashed across her face. Inside the brocade box was an exquisite jade flute. The jade flute had faint golden divine runes floating on it. It should be an earth book written using profound gold powder. It was indeed written with great care. Lu Feng cupped his fists and said, "This subject knows that your highness is well versed in music, so you chose a musical instrument as the tool embryo. The jade flute's texture is brittle, and it is very difficult for it to contain too much spiritual power. But this jade flute's texture is of the highest quality. It was fortunate that it could be turned into a book. This is truly rare. I hope your highness will like it." Qin Yin smiled wholeheartedly, then many thanks to young master Lu Feng. Lu Feng sincerely bowed and said, "As long as your highness can show your happiness, all of this subject's efforts will be worth it. In addition, this subject has planted a strange flower called the violet orchid in the mansion's courtyard. When spring comes it will germinate and bloom. At that time, if your highness is in the mood to admire the flowers, you can come to the Lu mansion to take a look." Lin Muyu couldn't help but frown. This Lu Feng really was a playboy. He simply used all kinds of skills to pick up girls without a cooldown. I can't tolerate this. If I knew this would happen, I would have let Wei Chou stab him to death with a sword. However, Lu Feng had underestimated Qin Yin too much. She wasn't the girl next door, but the Empire's princess who had personally experienced the chaos in Lanyan City. She was a girl who ascended to the throne after a narrow escape from death and personally experienced the war against the demon race. She had seen too much eagerness and too many hedonistic young masters. She knew where her heart belonged and understood that in this world, it wasn't about being with someone who treated her well, but rather, it was about working hard to be with someone she liked. It was very obvious that Qin Yin had long given her heart to Lin Muyu. Her defense against Lu Feng's offensive was simply 10,000. "Thank you, young master Lu Feng." Qin Yin smiled sweetly and said in a natural and unrestrained manner, "There are many flowers in the Zetian Palace's courtyard. I don't need to leave the Zetian Palace to see the arrival of spring, so there's no need to trouble young master Lu Feng." Lu Feng was startled, but he was still unwilling and continued to say, "Your highness? I, Lu Feng, am willing to sacrifice my life for your highness. If I, Lu Feng, can surpass the limits of writing a heavenly book, is your highness willing to grant me a chance to have a meal alone?" Qin Yin was startled. As the empress, there were some words that were difficult for her to say out loud. However, at this moment, Feng Jixing couldn't bear it anymore and shouted, "Lu Feng, that's enough. Her highness is the monarch and you are the subject. I think you have already forgotten the difference between a monarch and a subject, right? Her highness is the monarch of a nation, above tens of thousands of people. How can a hedonistic young master like you pursue her? If you say one more word, I will immediately order for you to be expelled from the Zetian Palace." Tang Lan frowned and said, "General Feng, the Lu residence is a heavenly book distinguished family in the Cangnan province. I hope that you can be lenient with your words. Besides, a fair and graceful lady is a gentleman's desire. Her highness is in the prime of her youth and her peerless beauty is even more rare in this world. Even though Lu Feng is a subject, he is still young after all. It is understandable that he admires her highness' beauty. I hope that your highness can understand." Qin Yin nodded and smiled, "Thank you for your trouble, Master Lan." Feng Jixing smiled, "It's just that. Her highness' cultivation has already stepped into the saint realm and her beauty will remain forever. Even if another 10 or 50 years pass, she will still be as beautiful as she is now. On the other hand, Lu Feng, what cultivation do you have? In another 50 years you will be old and frail. Can you still match up to her highness who is as beautiful as a flower?" Lu Feng was startled. He clenched his fists and said, I will also start practicing martial arts." Qin Yin's beautiful eyes were like water as she looked at the officials in the palace. She said indifferently, "My lords, I know that many people are worried about Xiao Yin's marriage. They are worried that there will be no successor for the empire and that Xiao Yin will be lonely. In fact, there is no need for that. The person that Xiao Yin loves is my elder brother, Marquis Yunling, the commander of the Dragon's Courage Legion, Lin Muyu. If I marry, I will marry him. Everyone in the world knows about this. No matter if it is 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years or even 10,000 years, my heart will not change." Lu Feng was startled. He never thought that his pursuit would actually cause Qin Yin to reveal her feelings in front of the officials. At this moment Lin Muyu spoke. He cupped his fists and said excitedly, "Your Highness? Since you have confessed, then I must say a few words." Feng Jixing almost vomited blood. He glared at him. "You still want to act cool at a time like this?" Lin Muyu took a few steps forward and said, "Your Highness is the ruler of a country. You are above tens of thousands of people and have an honorable status. If your highness is willing to be with me, Lin Muyu, I will definitely not lose to anyone no matter in which aspect. Since young Master Lu Feng has written an earth book for your highness, then I have also written an earth book. I will offer it to your highness here. As he spoke, he took out a steel sword from his universe bag and respectfully walked forward with it in his hand. Qin Yin giggled, her beautiful eyes full of affection. She held the long sword, and suddenly a stream of spiritual power surged on the engravings. Under the urging of the power, the engravings glowed with a pale yellow light. Earth book. It really is an earth book. The officials were shocked. Tang Lan, Su Muyun, Xiang Yu and the others all frowned. Everyone knew that Lin Muyu's martial arts cultivation was unparalleled in the world, but no one expected him to be able to write an earth book. What could this brat not know? Lu Feng's gaze stayed on the steel sword in Qin Yin's hand. His face became paler and paler. That brat actually wrote an earth book. Although it was a low-grade earth book, it was actually the most difficult earth book to write, the life book. Where did he come from? He could even write an earth book inscription in one go? On the other hand, Lu Ying's face was full of admiration and joy. Although she was slightly disappointed when she found out that Lin Muyu and Qin Yin were lovers, the moment she saw the light from the earth book, she fell in love again. In her heart, Lin Muyu was already the most outstanding man in the world. His martial arts cultivation was unparalleled in the world, and his earth book inscription was also extraordinary. Qin Yin carefully sheathed the sword and said with a smile, "Thank you, big brother Yu." At the side, Shangguan Jingyue asked, "What about the mid-grade earth book jade flute?" "Put it in the heavenly book pavilion," Qin Yin said lightly. "Yes." The court meeting ended just like that, but everyone had their own thoughts in their hearts. Lin Muyu was actually able to write an earth book. This was undoubtedly throwing a 500-kilogram boulder into the pool of water that was Lanyan City. There were many disputes in the heavenly book realm, and now it was becoming more and more chaotic. Chapter 508. Bailing City, the capital of Iha country. After a heavy snowfall, the entire 100-mountain city seemed to be wrapped in a layer of white cotton clothes. In the morning, tens of thousands of smoke slowly rose from the kitchen chimneys in the city. All the big shops opened their doors for business, and the city was extremely prosperous. At the rear of the 100-ridge city, the iron gate of the iron wall was wide open, and countless merchants came in and out. Ever since the Empire defeated the Qianfeng Corps of the demon race in the Battle of Wildfire Plains, the Iha Kingdom had also taken back all the cities in the southern ridge and resumed trade. In the mansion of the King of Jinnan, a group of maids walked leisurely, lighting incense burners. Although it was winter, they were still dressed in light muslin, revealing their graceful figures, but at the same time, all of them were so cold that their lips trembled. Qin Yi, who was wearing a leather robe embroidered with the insignia of a great commander, unfurled a scroll and carefully read the words on it. To the side, 3 civil officials and 3 military generals were waiting. "Have you bought the things?" Qin Yi raised his head and asked. Ji Yao shuddered. He cupped his fists and said, "Please forgive me, Commander-in-Chief. I didn't do my job well. Although we managed to buy the items, our people were hunted down by the Imperial Army after leaving Lanyan City. The entire army was wiped out, and all the gold notes and heavenly book artifact embryos were lost." "Lost?" Qin Yi frowned and said, "Which army discovered it?" "Lin Muyu's valiant Dragon Corps." "Humph. It's him again." A strong killing intent surged in Qin Yi's eyes as he said, "If we don't get rid of Lin Muyu, she'll eventually become a great threat to our Iha country. Since she's been discovered, I'm afraid that the Empire's control over the heavenly book's weapon embryos will be even stricter. It'll be extremely difficult for us to obtain another batch of weapon embryos." Long Qianlin cupped his fists and said, "Commander-in-Chief, it is said that Qin Yin has already ordered 3 days ago that all the Heavenly Tomes weapon embryos must be registered at the Heavenly Tomes Pavilion and issued a certificate to every weapon embryo. Moreover, all the city gates of Lanyan City have been set up with sensor crystals so that anyone who carries a weapon embryo's energy out of the city will be discovered. They seem to value the Heavenly Tomes more than we do." Qin Yi nodded. "Marshal Ji Yao. Your subject is here." Ji Yao cupped his fists and said solemnly, "The people you sent to Lanyan City, did the 4 great clans respond? Since we can't bring the embryo out of Lanyan City, we can only bring a living person out of the city to serve the Iha nation." "Yes." The muscles on Ji Yao's face twitched slightly as he said, "Prince Zhong's residence, Qinyang's family is extremely loyal to the Empire and flatly rejected the Iha nation's invitation. The Ji residence is under the influence of the Seven Seas King, Tang Lan, and Ji Lin is also respected as the Heavenly Book Pavilion's manager, enjoying all the favor, so he definitely isn't willing to come to the Iha nation. As for the Lu residence, our people had just entered the residence when they were chased out by their second young master, Lu Feng. It's really annoying. The only one who can be persuaded is the Ouyang residence. The Ouyang family is greedy for fame and fortune, but in the Heavenly Book Pavilion, they are below the other three great families, so they have always harbored resentment. Qin Yi squinted his eagle-like eyes and said indifferently, "Then let's give them a high position and a generous salary to test the Ouyang family. What kind of bait can the commander-in-chief give this subject? As long as Ouyang Bao is willing to move his entire family to Iha country, I will grant him the status of a duke and grant him a title of 10,000 households, which will be passed down from generation to generation. In addition, I will give him 50 million Jingring coins to settle down." Heavens! Ji Yao gaped in shock, then said, 50 million, isn't that too much? Too much? Qin Yi said indifferently, there is only one Heavenly Tome noble clan in Iha country, and they have too few people. If the Ouyang family can come to Lingnan, I will ask the experts of the divine domain of the seven world palaces to protect them in the forest of the Heavenly Tome monoliths to search for the lost ancient divine characters. With the Ouyang family's Heavenly Tome talent, they will definitely be able to write a Heavenly Tome, or even a divine tome. At that time, why would we need to worry about the Empire not submitting to us? Is the Commander-in-Chief talking about the Heavenly Tome monoliths? Long Qianlin stared blankly, then said, the forest of the Heavenly Tome monoliths is located in the White Leaves Forest deep within the mountains. It is said that the White Leaves Forest is filled with ferocious beasts, and it is guarded by dozens of vicious beasts that have lived for tens of thousands of years. Other than that, it is said that there are also some hermits hidden within the forest cultivating there. Whether they are vicious beasts or hermits, I'm afraid that they will be very difficult to deal with. Moreover, the Heavenly Tome monoliths forest is only a legend from tens of thousands of years ago. Qin Yi said, I know all this, but the reopening of the Heavenly Imperial Gate and the reappearance of the Heavenly Tome monolith forest are also matters that must be carried out. Use all the strength we can to find the Heavenly Tome monolith forest. I will leave this matter to you, Marshal Ji Yao. Ji Yao's entire body trembled, then he cupped his hands and said, I will definitely not disappoint the Commander-in-Chief's expectations. I will find the Heavenly Tome monolith forest, copy down all of the monolith inscriptions and bring them back to Iha country. Good, immediately gather people to do it. In addition, do not make this matter known, and even more so, do not let the people of the Empire know. Yes. Ji Yao cupped his hands and respectfully retreated. Qin Yi turned his gaze to Long Qianlin and said, General Long, what are the recent movements of the demons? Long Qianlin said, the Qianfeng and Lei Chong armies have already returned to the north of the mountains. The Qianfeng army is lying dormant in Winterfrost City, while the Lei Chong army is guarding the eastern border of Changnan province, far away from the armies of the Empire's steel wall. There shouldn't be a great battle in a short period of time. The spies we sent out have found some news. The Qianfeng army is currently speeding up the replenishment of the armor demons. Every day we can see a batch of armor demons coming out of the Heaven's Path Gorge. However, our people do not dare to enter the Heaven's Path Gorge. Any human who enters the Heaven's Path Gorge dies. So it's like that. I wonder what the demons are up to. Qin Yi gently pressed his palm on the table and said, we should make plans as early as possible. By the way, how is your research on the arrow box going? We have dismantled the arrow box used by the Empire. After careful study, the weapons department has developed a new arrow box. Moreover, the improved arrow box has a greater range and greater lethality. At present, the weapons department is working hard to forge it. I believe that before the next war we will have at least 1,000 arrow boxes. Please rest assured, General. Yes. Also, we should intensify the training of the Iron Chain Horse. But our Iron Chain Horse has no advantage over the Armor Demon Corps at all. General. Long Qianlin said suspiciously, why do we continue to practice this kind of combat method? Qin Yi's eyes lit up. General Long, we should make plans as early as possible. What do you think about using the Iron Chain Horse to fight against the heavy cavalry of the Empire after the demons are wiped out? Long Qianlin could not help but feel a little disappointed. Do you still want to destroy the Empire, General? Of course. Qin Yi leaned back on the throne behind him and let out a long sigh. I can't sleep well if Qin Yin, Lin Muyu and Feng Jixing are not dead. General Long, you must not have felt the pain of being unable to sleep at night. Long Qianlin, half a month passed in the blink of an eye. Lanyan City, the snow had just cleared up. It was another Shangxi festival. After celebrating with the people, 4 heaters were lit in the rear hall of Zetian Palace. A wave of warmth enshrouded the place. Female officials and maids stood quietly behind Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi, waiting on them without looking sideways. Swish! A blue light shot up from the dagger in Qin Yin's hand. According to the intensity of the light, it was relatively dim. It should be a low-rank book. However, Qin Yin was so excited that she was about to jump up. She said joyfully, "I've become a book. Xiaoxi, I've become a book." Yes. Tang Xiaoxi's face was also flushed with excitement. She said with a smile, "Xiao Yin has become a book. I should be one soon too. I should be." As she spoke, Tang Xiaoxi waved her spiritual pen and quickly wrote a paragraph of divine text on a shield. She had memorized the symbols of this divine text. It was not easy for Tang Xiaoxi, who had never liked to study since she was young. After she finished writing the divine text, Tang Xiaoxi suddenly froze. Flames emerged from her eye. Although the flames were relatively weak, she still entered the state of mind. Swish! Another beam of light green light soared into the sky. This was the second time that the Zetian Palace had activated the power of the heavens and the earth today. Tang Xiaoxi had also become a book. Although it was still a low-ranked book, and it was the worst book among all the heavenly books, it was enough to make the Countess extremely happy. Mu Xiaoyin and I have become books. Tang Xiaoxi excitedly rushed to a giant golden pillar at the back of the palace but did not say anything. This was because she and Qin Yin had discovered that Lin Muyu was very focused. The spiritual pen in his hand was swishing and writing golden divine text on a broadsword. This stingy fellow was finally willing to use low-rank black gold powder to write a book of heaven. It was not easy at all. Lin Muyu was completely focused. His eyebrows were tightly knitted as he wrote the divine text. He had already entered a state of complete concentration. In his eye, the light of the holy pen Amaterasu shone in all directions. Every stroke of the pen was so focused and powerful. One by one, the divine text quickly seeped into the broadsword. Very quickly, just as the book was about to be completed, his body suddenly shook. His spiritual sense entered a chaotic space. Hurricanes danced wildly around him, almost tearing his armor and body apart. The biting cold wind made it difficult for him to open his eyes. An absolute storm was gradually forming. Swish! A pale yellow light shot up into the sky. Once again he had become a book. Wow! Qin Yin and Tang Xiaoxi's little mouths were wide open. It's become a book again. A low-rank earthly tome. Lin Muyu took a deep breath and woke up from his state of mind. Looking at the pale yellow light on the blade, he said, "Yes, it's become a book again. And it's still a low-rank earthly tome. What's wrong with me?" This was already the 5th low-rank earthly tome that Lin Muyu had written in the past half a month. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he refined the wisp of Fushi's divine power, and even the materials he used were constantly upgraded. He used an exquisite artifact embryo and black gold powder, but the result was still a low-rank earthly tome. There was not a single trace of a breakthrough. Qin Yin slowly sat down beside Lin Muyu. She smiled gently and said, "It's probably because of the combination of the divine characters. The divine characters that we use are all very simple, and they can't activate the more powerful power of heaven and earth. If we want to write a heavenly book of a higher grade, we have to learn more complicated and profound divine character combinations." "Yes, that's right." Lin Muyu slowly sheathed his long sword and asked, "But where can we learn more profound stories?" "I don't know either. Most of the heavenly tome and godly tome inscriptions on the continent have been lost." Chapter 509. At night, in the courtyard of the commander of the Longdan army camp, Lin Muyu held the star sword in her hand and looked up at the stars in the sky. She absorbed and refined the power of the stars. A strong king's fighting flame was also spinning rapidly on the surface of her body. As the star power that Lin Muyu refined became stronger and more vigorous, the strength of the king's fighting flame also underwent a huge change. The impact in her chi became more and more intense. Suddenly, the surging fighting chi seemed to have broken through a layer of suppression in her chi and quickly passed through all the meridians in her body. An incomparably comfortable feeling spread throughout her body. Another breakthrough. Lin Muyu was secretly delighted. With the progress of her cultivation of the heavenly book inscriptions, the cultivation of her state of mind was also getting higher and higher. Finally, she had broken through to the realm of the divine legacy. The strength of the king's fighting flame had greatly increased by a level. Before she could finish being happy, a deep chill suddenly fell from the sky and countless starlight poured into her body. Unlike the scorching heat of the 5 mountains descending from the heavens and the star lotus armor, this power of the stars was full of chill. In the blink of an eye, it turned into thousands of stars that continuously fell into Lin Muyu's EC. Bang bang bang. Lin Muyu's spiritual awareness turned into an entity and flew in the EC. However, she could only watch as countless icy stars fell into the EC, stirring up monstrous waves. The waves suddenly froze when they surged in the air and turned into ice pillars. What a terrible chill. In just 2 minutes, Lin Muyu's EC had turned into a glacier. In an instant, Lin Muyu's consciousness seemed to be about to be frozen. Her whole body fell into a desperate situation that was close to death. What's going on? He was stunned and hurriedly used the king's fighting flame to melt the glacier. Suddenly, a vigorous flame rose from the depths of the EC and continued to fight against the chill of the stars in the sky. After a long time, just when Lin Muyu was about to collapse from exhaustion, the chill of the stars in the sky finally slowly melted and became a mysterious frost power under Lin Muyu's control. Ah! Heaving a heavy sigh of relief, Lin Muyu separated herself from the E-High. Her entire body was covered in cold sweat, as if she had narrowly escaped death from purgatory. But in his exhaustion, he could feel a stream of ice force slowly flowing in his ocean of chi. That's right, it was star force of the ice attribute. He had finally mastered the 5th move of the star tactics. He slowly opened his 5 fingers and suddenly rays of cold stars rotated around his palm. The next moment, Lin Muyu suddenly closed his 5 fingers, and instantly the power of ice surged in all directions. The 5th form of the star tactics was extremely destructive, icy jade frost. The surroundings had become an extremely cold domain, and thick frost had condensed on the ground. The old banyan tree that had sprouted because of the Book of Life had also instantly turned into an ice tree. With a crack, the ice tree turned into powder and broke into pieces. It was conceivable that if a human approached Lin Muyu, he would also die in the extremely cold domain of the jade snow frost. Moreover, his death would be very tragic, turning into broken ice and dying. An endless wave of tiredness surged in his heart. He couldn't care so much anymore, so he went back to his room and fell asleep. Only rest and sleep could replenish the lost soul power and the king's fighting flame. The next day, Zetian Hall. Qin Yin finally passed the decision to auction the heavenly books. The 3 major chambers of commerce in the capital that had obtained the permission could sell the heavenly books in the auction house. The 3 major chambers of commerce were Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce, Dragon Seeking Chamber of Commerce, and Wanxing Chamber of Commerce. This also meant that the empire no longer monopolized the resources of the heavenly books. However, if one wanted to bring the heavenly books out of the city, he would need the permission from the Heavenly Book Pavilion and the Imperial Army. There were many people in the Heavenly Book Pavilion. It was not difficult to obtain the permission from the Heavenly Book Pavilion, but it was difficult to obtain the permission from the commander of the Imperial Army, Feng Jixing. Therefore, even though the 3 Shang League had started to auction the heavenly books, the result was still the same. The heavenly book embryos could only be circulated in Lanyan City, and would eventually be used by the empire. In the afternoon, Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce released the news that they would be selling 3 lower-grade earthly books, 7 spiritual books and 11 personal books 3 days later. Of course, these heavenly books came from Lin Muyu, Tang Xiaoxi and Qin Yin. They did not join the Heavenly Book Pavilion, so the heavenly books that they carved only belonged to them and could be sold at will. However, in this way the other major chambers of commerce could not sit still anymore. Late at night, in the residence of the King of Clouds, a group of guards stood outside the main hall with steel sabers in their hands. The candles in the hall were swaying and a big pot was boiling meat soup. Beside it was a basket of wild vegetables. Su Muyun and Su Yu sat opposite each other. There were 2 other people beside them. One of them was the boss of the Wanxing Chamber of Commerce, Lu Xin, and the other was his daughter, Lu Ro. She was an 18-year-old girl wearing a long purple dress and was extremely beautiful. Cough, cough. Lu Xin's expression was a little ugly. She said, "It's rare that your highness still has the leisure to eat hot pot here. Jin Xiaotang has almost robbed our Wanxing Chamber of Commerce's source of income in Lanyan City. In the past few months they have opened ironware shops, rice shops, silk shops and so on. They have continuously attracted the weaker Shang League members to join them. The entire Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce has become so huge that it is comparable to the Imperial Chamber of Commerce. Now that they have announced that they will be selling the Heavenly Book artifact embryos in 3 days, I'm afraid that the economic lifeline of the entire empire will soon be controlled by Jin Xiaotang and Lin Muyu. Boss Lu, don't be anxious. Su Muyun smiled slightly. Let's eat first. As for Jin Xiaotang and the Imperial Chamber of Commerce, let them do what they want. It doesn't matter. How can you say that it doesn't matter? Lu Xian could not help but stand up. Her face was red as she said, the Wanxing Chamber of Commerce's business is getting worse. This month's profit is only about 80% of last month's. If this continues, I'm afraid we're really finished. That won't happen. Su Muyun comforted her. 3 days later, a batch of goods will be shipped from Yunzhong province. Among them there are at least 8 lower-grade earth tomes, nearly 30 spiritual tomes, and nearly 100 personal tomes. Isn't this enough for the Wanxing Chamber of Commerce to make a comeback? Lu Xian was instantly stunned. How is it possible? How can there be so many heavenly tomes outside of Lanyan City? Lu Ro was also surprised. Yes, Su Yu smiled and said, it's very simple. A month ago, Father began to search for talents who could inscribe heavenly tomes in Yunzhong province. He also sent people to set up the Scholars Pavilion in Muyu City to recruit talents from all over the world. Now there are more than 300 scholars in the Scholars Pavilion. It's not surprising that there are so many heavenly tomes. Su Muyun gently stroked his white beard and said, Boss Lu, do you have any objections now? No. Lu Xian nodded repeatedly. Your Highness is really far-sighted. I admire you very much. Only when you're full will you have the energy to work. Yes. By the way, when will the new war horses that the Iron Blade army needs be delivered? The northern desert is too far from Lanyan City. It will take about a month to get there. 5,000 good horses are the best war horses in the northern desert. Your Highness will not be disappointed. Okay, I'll remember your contribution. Thank you, Your Highness. 3 days later, the Zine Flower Chamber of Commerce was as crowded as expected. The business was so good that it was scary. As this was the first time that the inscriptions of heavenly tomes were sold in the capital, almost all the big families had sent people there. The purpose of the inscriptions of heavenly tomes was to intimidate people. If some of the brave and ruthless playboys had the heavenly tomes in their hands, others would be afraid of them. The auction house also took advantage of the bad habits of these people, so their business was booming. In the end, the 3 heavenly tomes were sold for 800,000, 2,700,000 and 1,800,000 respectively. The spiritual books were mostly sold for around 200,000. The human books were cheaper and could be bought for around 50,000. However, this still made Lin Muyu a great profit. The first auction of the Heavenly Book embryo also made the people in the Heavenly Book Pavilion envious. A earthly scholar only received a monthly salary of 3,000 Jinyin coins, but a local book could actually be sold for around 2 million Jinyin coins. It should be known that even if a earthly scholar's output was low, they could still write a local book within half a year. The price of a local book was enough for them to live a luxurious life. However, those people still flocked to enter the Heavenly Book Pavilion. After all, only those who entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion could be conferred nobility. Otherwise, they would only be merchants and would never have the chance to bring honor to their ancestors. In the afternoon of the next day, a group of people entered Lanyan City. It was Su Jiantao from Five Valley City who led 1,000 cavalry back to the imperial capital. Ever since he became the governor of Changnan province, Su Jiantao spent most of his time in Five Valley City. After entering the city, Su Jiantao didn't go to Zetian Hall first. Instead, he went to the Longdan army camp to see Lin Muyu. After all, Lin Muyu, the Marquis of Yunling, was the master of Changnan province. Inside the hall, Su Jiantao came in with 3 kiliarchs. He cupped his fists and said, Commander, Su Jiantao is here. General, you may dispense with the formalities. What gift did you bring to the Longdan army camp this time? I don't have a gift, but I do have a bill. What bill? Su Jiantao smiled and handed over a piece of parchment. He said, the mineral resources in Changnan province are very rich. Under our vigorous exploration, we have recently discovered 3 black gold mines, 7 black silver mines, 4 black copper mines, and more than a dozen black iron mines. Her Highness the Empress has already granted us permission to mine in the name of Five Valleys City. This is this month's list. We have refined a total of 300 caddies of black gold powder, nearly 1,000 caddies of black silver powder, black copper powder and black iron powder. Lin Muyu was overjoyed. I have a secret agreement with Xiaoyin. 30% of these mines will be handed over to the Ministry of Revenue, and the rest will be kept for ourselves. You can secretly send them to Jin Xiaotang for sale to enrich our funds. Yes, I understand. As he spoke, Su Jintao suddenly narrowed his eyes and said, "By the way, Your Excellency, the Longdan Army Camp's patrolling cavalry stationed in Five Valleys City has recently caught a vagabond." A vagabond? Lin Muyu was stunned. How vagabond? He's not very vagabond, but he brought us a very important piece of news. What news? The Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths really exists. It is in the mountains west of the Swift White Province's Sunset City, in a forest called the Forest of White Leaves. That vagabond once wandered into the Forest of White Leaves and saw those monoliths. Afterwards, he was almost eaten by a powerful spiritual beast. After pretending to be dead, the spiritual beast did not eat the corpse and escaped. It is said that the Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths records a few ancient divine characters, and is the holy land that scholars dream of. However, the Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths is filled with wild beasts and danger lurks everywhere. Thus, scholars without the strength to truss a chicken are unable to enter. As he spoke, Su Jintao took a deep breath. It is said that the people of Iha country are also secretly preparing to enter the Forest of Heavenly Tome Monoliths. I understand, Lin Muyu muttered to herself. She secretly calculated that it was time to go to Iha country. Chapter 510. What? Go to the Iha nation? Qin Yin sat up in shock, her starry eyes filled with unwillingness. No, the Empire and the Iha nation are constantly at war. It's too dangerous to go to the Iha nation. I don't agree. Why? Lin Muyu clenched her fist, the imposing manner of a holy king expert. With my current cultivation, not many people can stop me in the Iha nation. Besides, Luolan has been in the 7 world palaces for a long time and doesn't care about worldly affairs. As long as Luolan doesn't personally act, no one can make things difficult for me. Besides, if the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest really does exist, then we must find it before the Iha nation, or else they'll have the upper hand. On the side, Feng Jixing said, if it's really as Su Jintao said, the Empire really does need someone to find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest first. I hope that Your Highness can consider the bigger picture. In the entire Empire, there is no one more suitable than you to find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. Even General Feng agrees to you going to the Iha nation? Qin Yin angrily glared at Feng Jixing. Yes, Your Highness. Feng Jixing said, after the Heavenly Tomes take effect again, they will influence the future of the war. The Empire cannot fall behind. I hope that Your Highness will be careful. Fine. The corner of Qin Yin's mouth rose, revealing a crafty smile. Then I'll disguise myself and go with you to find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest. What? Feng Jixing was immediately frightened. Your Highness, this matter needs to be considered at length. Don't be impulsive. As the ruler of a country, how can you just leave like that? What if something unexpected happens? Didn't you support finding the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest? Qin Yin stood up, puffed out her round chest and said confidently, with my cultivation, going with Brother Yu to the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest will definitely not be a problem. And just as General Feng said, I am the ruler of a country, so I must bear the Empire's future. Since the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest is so important, I must personally go. Feng Jixing said nothing. Then what about Zetian Hall? Qin Yin held Tang Xiaoxi's little hand and said with a smile, let Xiaoxi take over my government for half a month. Tang Xiaoxi whimpered, I want to go too, okay? Feng Jixing felt a headache. Can you guys have a sense of responsibility? Saying that you're going out for training, I want to go too, then let's go together, big brother Feng. Lin Muyu smiled. Feng Jixing was exasperated. So, before the late emperor left, he asked me, Feng Jixing, to take good care of Your Highness and the Great Qin Empire. Now that the empire has been split into 2, Feng Jixing has already let down the late emperor, and now I have to watch Your Highness take risks. As he spoke, Feng Jixing patted Lin Muyu's shoulder and said, in any case, I'll leave His Highness's safety to you all along the way. As for Princess Shi, just follow His Highness's orders and stay in Zetian Palace to manage the affairs and control the situation. This. Tang Xiaoxi blinked her eyes, but she didn't know what to say to refuse. Qin Yin held her hand and said with a smile, if I and Brother Yu really find the Heavenly Tome Monolith Forest, we will definitely copy down the inscriptions and bring them back. Xiaoxi, don't worry. Alright then. Don't go back on your word. I want all of the heavenly tomes of fire. All right. With the decision made, Qin Yin handed the imperial jade seal to Tang Xiaoxi for safekeeping. This jade seal was inlaid with gold and was extremely precious. Tang Xiaoxi carefully held it in her hands. Afterwards, seeing that Qin Yin and Lin Muyu had already disguised themselves as merchants, she could only accept it. She said in an aggrieved manner, "Xiao Yin, since I can't go to the Iha nation this time, you must help me play with all of the mountains and rivers that I can play with." Qin Yin didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "We're not going to play with the mountains and rivers, we're going to find the heavenly tome monolith forest." "And I know." Lin Muyu looked at Tang Xiaoxi and felt a little heartache. She said, "Once we destroy the Iha nation and unify the world, Xiaoxi, you can go play wherever you want." "All right, Xiao Yin and I will set off immediately. Xiaoxi, don't forget to cultivate. I hope that by the time I return, your martial spirit will have already evolved into a four-tailed fire fox. And I will work hard. You guys be careful on the road." "Got it." On Clear Sky Street, Qin Yin was dressed in soft fur armor and a white fox cape. Her hair was coiled up and casually threaded with a jade hairpin. She looked elegant and pretty. This was the attire of a rich young lady from Lanyan City. Basically all the women of merchants would dress like this, but none of them were as elegant and graceful as Qin Yin. On the other hand, Lin Muyu was dressed in the attire of a house guard. She wore chainmail and a coarsely made animal skin robe with a clan crest pinned to her chest. She rode the treading snow warhorse, acting as Qin Yin's personal bodyguard. The two of them were mixed in with a caravan. This caravan belonged to the Purple Yin Flower Chamber of Commerce. They were going to Lingnan's Iha Nation's Sunset City to purchase fresh leather goods. Although the Empire and the Iha Nation were at war, trade was still allowed. It was just that the inspections were relatively stricter. Clearly, this caravan didn't know who Lin Muyu and Qin Yin were. They only knew that Jin Xiaotang had stuffed them in and was responsible for bringing them to Sunset City. When the caravan left Lanyan City, snowflakes floated in the sky. It was snowing again. The cold wind blew. Lin Muyu pulled at her collar and felt the chill. The other guards were already shivering in the cold. As a holy king, Lin Muyu's resistance to the cold was not something an ordinary person could compare to. She could feel the chill, but she didn't fear it. However, when she turned to look at Qin Yin, she saw that she was tightly holding onto the reins of the warhorse. Her face was red from the cold and snowflakes fell on her long eyelashes. "Xiao Yin, why don't you go into the carriage?" Lin Muyu asked with concern. Qin Yin shook her head and let out a breath of hot air. She smiled and said, "I'm fine. Besides, the women of the caravan are in the carriage. I'm not used to interacting with strangers. Brother, you don't force me into the carriage." "All right then." Lin Muyu said, "You cultivate the law of light and you're a woman. Your resistance to the cold is far inferior to mine. Why don't you come into my arms?" "Can I?" Qin Yin blushed. She suddenly felt like her heart was beating fast. "Why not? These people won't say anything." "Okay." Qin Yin nodded and leaped up. Starlight flashed between her feet, and in the next moment she was already sitting in Lin Muyu's arms. The two of them rode on the same treading on snow warhorse. The guards behind them were dumbfounded. Ever since they had started their journey, this beautiful girl had been silent. No one had expected her to be so skilled. She was not a delicate woman at all. And when Qin Yin was in her arms, Lin Muyu slowly circulated her king's battle flame. A faint flame power enshrouded her arms. Qin Yin could naturally feel the warmth. She couldn't help but smile and say, "Brother, you don't need to use your battle chi to warm me up. This is a kind of cultivation for cultivators. Xiao Yin can withstand the cold." Okay. Lin Muyu slowly dispersed her king's battle flame. Feeling the warmth of Qin Yin in her arms, the two of them were truly warming each other up. It snowed for a full 5 days. Just when the sky cleared up, the convoy with empty carriages finally arrived at Xiang City with difficulty. They had now entered the Iha Nation's territory, but there were no restrictions. War was a matter between armies. Ever since the massacre at Lanyan City, the armies of the Empire and the Iha Nation rarely attacked civilians. Lin Muyu was dressed as a guard and wasn't afraid of being recognized. Although there were portraits of him and Qin Yin almost everywhere in the Iha Nation, they didn't look alike. Therefore, very few people knew what the Empress and Marquis Yinling looked like. In the end, the boss of the convoy spent a few Jining coins and the convoy successfully entered Xiang City. Arriving at Xiang City again, Lin Muyu was naturally very emotional. The last time he left here, he left with a body full of fatal injuries. He would always remember Ding Shi's arrow that almost took his life, but he would always remember Ding Shi's trust and protection of him. If it wasn't for Ding Shi, perhaps he and Qin Yin wouldn't be alive now. Following the main road in the city, they left Xiang City in a straight line. Their next destination was the eastern forest of the Swift White Province. It would take at least 3 to 5 days of travel to reach the vicinity of the White Leaves Forest. Outside the city, there was an endless stream of people. There were merchants, mercenaries, and farmers. Lin Muyu urged his horse forward slowly and whispered to Qin Yin, "The group of people on the left has a heavenly book on them. It looks like a high-grade spiritual book. They should be heading for the same destination as us, the White Leaves Forest." Qin Yin glanced at them and saw that the group of people on the left was dressed very strangely. In the middle was a young man dressed like a scholar and was about 25 years old. Surrounding him was a group of burly mercenaries and guards. It seemed like they were responsible for protecting him. Second young master. A mercenary with the insignia of a chiliarch on his shoulder said respectfully, "This time, you secretly went out to find the heavenly tome monolith forest without even telling the master. Isn't that a little inappropriate?" The second young master had an unruly expression and sneered, "General Liu, you will bring 50 people to protect me. I will pay you a sufficient commission. Don't worry, even if you don't find anything on this trip, you will still receive a commission of 3,000 Jinyin coins. If you help me find the heavenly tome monolith forest, I will give you an additional 100,000 Jinyin coins. So, you only need to take care of your own business." "Yes, your subordinate understands." Lin Muyu heard everything clearly and quickly deduced the identity of these people. Since this second young master knew of the existence of the heavenly tome monolith forest, he must also be a heavenly tome scholar. Moreover, to be called the second young master and to be so generous, he must be the second young master of the Iha Kingdom's largest heavenly tome family, the Northern Qi Manor, Huan of Northern Qi. As expected, the struggle for the heavenly tome monolith forest was not simple. The people of the Iha Kingdom had also received the news. Lin Muyu and Qin Yin looked at each other and tacitly urged their horses forward. The 2 war horses galloped away. The fewer people who knew about them, the better. Chapter 511. In the evening, they stayed in a small town on the eastern border of the Swift White Province. In order to conceal their identities, Lin Muyu and Qin Yin each bought a hunter's attire and disguised themselves as hunter siblings. When Qin Yin's fur armor was changed into a leather skirt armor, and her hair was replaced with a hairpin made of animal bone, she looked more like a girl next door. Lin Muyu stared at her for a long time. "Have you seen enough?" Qin Yin giggled and asked, "What's different about me now?" "You're very different." Lin Muyu smiled and said, "Xiaoyin, let's hurry. There's an inn about 10 miles from here. Let's spend the night there." "Yes." The 2 of them mounted their horses and left the small town. Both of them carried longbows and quivers on their backs. No matter how you looked at it, they looked like a pair of hunter siblings. Not long after sunset, there was indeed an inn on the side of the road. Many travelers stopped here. Some were there to eat and drink while others stayed the night. After handing the horses to the waiter, they booked 2 rooms. The lobby of the inn was bustling with activity. A young bard girl was playing the zither and singing an old nursery rhyme. A group of mercenaries and rich young masters listened to her, mesmerized. Lin Muyu looked around and was shocked to see that group of people again. Huan of Northern Qi and his group of guards were all there. They were squeezed together and took up half the lobby. "Sir, this way please." "There's an empty table over there," the waiter said politely. "Thank you." Qin Yin ordered 2 simple dinners and ate with Lin Muyu. Not long after, a young man dressed like a rich man suddenly stood up in a corner of the lobby. His face was red and it was clear that he was drunk. He walked forward unsteadily and held onto the balcony in the middle of the lobby. He smiled at the young girl and said, "Girl, I see that you sing well. Why don't you come to my room and sing for me again? I'll give you a Jinyin coin. What do you think?" The young girl paused and said, "Sir, I can't." "What did you say?" The noble young master's face turned red, and he held a Jinyin coin in his hand as he said, "I'm giving you face by doing this. Don't be so shameless. With your lowly status, it's a blessing for your ancestors to give you the opportunity to serve me. Let me tell you, with your status and appearance, a Jinyin coin is enough to sleep with you, not to mention that it's just a song from you." The young girl was so scared that her face was pale. "Sir, I'm just a performer. Please have some self-respect." The old man also begged, "Sir, let my daughter go. She's still young, get out of my way." The young master suddenly held the long sword in his hand horizontally and hit the old man with the scabbard with a bang. The long sword was enshrouded in a light green light, and the power of heaven and earth slowly circulated around it. It was actually a people's book, and it looked like a low-level people's book. He was angry and embarrassed and said, "Who in the eastern region of the province doesn't know my name? I wrote a middle-level people's book at the age of 22, and even the Marquis of Xiang sent me a letter of appointment. You little girl, how dare you not give me face? You're looking for death." Behind him, one of Li Zuo's guards started to jeer, "Ha ha, young master, do you want us to help you send this arrogant little girl to her room? Stop." Before Lin Muyu could speak, someone stood up not far away. It was Northern Qi's second son, Northern Qi Huan. His face was full of anger and he slammed the table and stood up. He said, "I didn't think there would be such a despicable person in the countryside, taking liberties with a girl in broad daylight. Li Zuo, you're shameless." "Who are you?" Li Zuo was startled and looked at Northern Qi Huan and the others. His face was full of shame and anger. "Who do you think you are? How dare you lecture me?" Northern Qi Huan sneered, and slowly walked forward with a thin sword in his hand. He said, "What did you just say? I didn't hear it clearly. That old guy, the Marquis of Xiang, personally sent you a letter of appointment?" "Yes, what about it?" "Ha! That old guy is really muddle-headed. How could he send a letter of appointment to an idiot like you? Is there really no one else in Iha country that a despicable person like you can succeed?" T. Li Zuo was furious and the sword in his hand glowed. He said, "I don't care who you are today. If you dare to interfere in my business, I'll let you have a taste of the Book of Heaven." "Is that so?" Northern Qi Huan's face was calm. He said, "Then bring it on. Bastard." Li Zuo's face had already begun to twist slightly. He gently flipped his wrist, and with a thought, the Book of Heaven was immediately activated. What a good low-level wind book. Wind blades spun around the blade, and suddenly flew towards Northern Qi Huan. After all, it was a low-level human book, the lowest level of Book of Heaven. Its power was far less terrifying than a spirit book or an earth book. It was equivalent to an attack from an earth realm cultivator. Northern Qi Huan raised his sword, and a thick orange light shot up from the blade. It was a top-level ice Book of Heaven. Hum hum hum. Waves of wind and snow gathered in front of Northern Qi Huan, condensing into the shape of an ice shield, easily dispelling Li Zuo's low-level spiritual book. At the same time, Northern Qi Huan rushed forward, and his sword suddenly came down from the sky. With a bang, the ice and snow swept across. Li Zuo stood majestically in place, his face ashen. The next moment, white frost climbed up his body. So weak." Northern Qi Huan slowly sheathed his sword and turned to leave. Behind him, with a crash, Li Zuo's body collapsed. Even his blood had been frozen into ice. His entire body had turned into a pile of broken ice. Looking at the situation, he should be completely dead. Murder, murder. The innkeeper was stunned. After Li Zuo's group of subordinates saw this, they were all dumbfounded. They did not even think of getting back at Northern Qi Huan. One by one, they rushed out of the door and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Northern Qi Huan returned to the table, sat down and said with a smile, "Drink, let's continue eating and drinking. Don't let a despicable person spoil our mood." Yes. The group of mercenaries seemed to be used to this. This soul-stirring scene of Book of Heaven killing, they should be used to it, right? Not long after, the innkeeper called in a few burly men. After cleaning up the pieces of the body, they began to sing again. The lobby was once again bustling with noise and excitement. Lin Muyu ate the wheat cake and drank the egg drop soup. She couldn't help but frown and said in a low voice, "Killing people in Iha Kingdom is so easy that no one cares?" Qin Yin raised the corner of her mouth and said softly, "The Iha Kingdom has its laws, but after the Heavenly Imperial Gate was reopened, they established another law regarding the Tomes of Heaven. Those who hold the Tomes of Heaven are allowed to fight and kill each other with the Tomes of Heaven, and the killer is not against the law." Qin Yi used this method to encourage the Tomes of Heaven within the borders of the Iha Kingdom to continuously improve their abilities. Hearing this, Lin Muyu felt a chill in her heart. Qin Yi was able to kill his brother and seize the throne, so he indeed had the courage to issue such a cruel law. At this moment, Northern Qi Huan suddenly glanced at Lin Muyu in the distance. He seemed to have already recognized Lin Muyu, but he was not too sure. Following this, Northern Qi Huan's gaze fell on Qin Yin's beauty and was unwilling to move away. Who would have thought that there would be such a beautiful girl in the countryside? Northern Chi Huan couldn't help but sigh to himself. He raised the wine cup in his hand and drank it in one gulp. To the side, the leader of the mercenaries, Lu Zan, smiled faintly. Looking at her attire, she should be the daughter of a hunter's family. If you really want her, it is not impossible. In any case, it has been a tiring journey. With such a beautiful woman by your side, this trip is not in vain. If you want her, I can help you settle this matter. Is that so? Northern Chi Huan laughed and gently patted Lu Zan's shoulder. If General Lu can send her to my bed tonight, there will be an extra 1,000 Jinyin coins in your purse tomorrow morning. Ha, leave it to me. The two of them did not know that every word they said was heard clearly by Lin Muyu's spiritual pulse technique. At this time Lin Muyu and Qin Yin had already eaten their fill and immediately went upstairs to their rooms. What's wrong? After entering the room, Qin Yin looked at him in surprise. Xiaoyin, it's all your fault. Lin Muyu said. What's wrong with me? Qin Yin was confused. Lin Muyu said seriously, it's all your fault for being so beautiful. The second son of Northern Qi in the hall has taken a fancy to you, so he and the accompanying mercenaries are conspiring against you. What? Qin Yin was slightly angry. She gripped the hilt of the heavenly sword and said, I'll go downstairs and teach them a lesson right now. Don't be rash, we can't reveal our identities. Lin Muyu thought for a moment and said, there's a better way. What way? Just come with me. Go out the back window. Okay. Not long after, a young man wearing black clothes and a black cloth over his face appeared in front of the inn. He suddenly kicked open the door and looked at the Northern Qi people with a cold gaze. He shouted, Who killed my son Li Zua? Get out here. I'll be waiting for you in the woods over there. Come if you have the guts. After speaking, he turned and left, leaving behind a group of dumbfounded people in the hall. Northern Qi Huan's expression was severe. Damn, the tiny Li family dares to challenge the Northern Qi government? Are they tired of living? General Lu, take your men and come with me. I want the Li family to know that Northern Qi Huan has more than one heavenly book. Yes, second son. The group of mercenaries picked up their weapons and walked out in a single file. The inn owner secretly wiped his forehead. Fortunately, this group of people was fighting outside. If it was inside the inn, his pitiful little shop would have been torn apart. Chapter 5:12. When Huan of Northern Qi and Lu Zan brought dozens of people into the forest, they saw the black-clothed man standing there with an unsheathed sword. The night was dark and his expression could not be seen, but they could faintly feel the strong aura emanating from him. Who exactly are you? Huan of Northern Qi laughed coldly, and with a swipe of his finger, he pulled out the dagger at his waist. The dagger glowed with a faint earthy sheen. It was another low-grade artifact. Lu Zan narrowed his eyes and with his hand on the hilt of his sword he said, Kid, no matter who you are, provoking the Northern Qi government today is a mistake you should never have made. Ha! The black-clothed man lightly gripped the hilt of his sword, his face full of righteous indignation. He said, You killed my young master Li Zua. This debt of blood must be paid in blood. Do you know how good young master Li Zua was to us guards? He was a very loyal person. That year when we were hunting in the mountains we were caught by bandits. The bandits forced us to drink urine. Do you know? In order to protect us, young master Li Zua drank all the urine, an entire bucket. After he finished, guess what? He wiped his mouth and asked the bandits if he could have a refill. Another time we went up the mountain again and got caught by bandits. Those bandits had a special hobby. In order to save us, young master endured the humiliation alone. His chrysanthemum went in and sunflower came out. God knows how painful it was. Such a loyal young master was killed by you. I don't care who you are, but you must die in this forest today. Huan of Northern Qi looked angry and embarrassed. So you are Li Zua's guard? Ha! A mere guard dares to challenge me? Come, for your courage I will use this local book to send you to the next world. Ah, third sound. Lu Zan put a hand on Huan of Northern Qi's dagger and said, There is no need to use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. Leave this kid to me, it just so happens that my quick sword hasn't tasted blood in a long time. Huan of Northern Qi laughed. Since General Lu is in the mood, I will leave this kid to you. All right. Lu Zan laughed heartily as he slowly pulled out his sword. It was a long sword that glowed with a green light. It should be a profound rank 7 weapon. It was rare for a mercenary leader like Lu Zan to have such a long sword. After he pulled out his sword, his face was filled with a sinister smile as he said, A mere guard dares to challenge me? Brat, you've got guts. Tell me your name, this daddy's sword will never kill a nameless ghost. The person in black was naturally Lin Muyu. She couldn't help but smile. There's no need. You're already a dead man anyway. Impudent. Lu Zan didn't ask for a name. His battle boots stepped on the soft snow as he charged forward. A wave of raging Jinqi flew around him, and a fire wolf martial spirit appeared in front of his chest. This person's cultivation wasn't too low. He was actually in the second tier of the Earth realm. Unfortunately, in front of Lin Muyu, this kind of cultivation was too insignificant. The star's sword didn't even leave its sheath. Just as Lu Zan's sharp sword was less than 6 feet away from Lin Muyu's chest, he suddenly raised his head. His handsome face was filled with murderous intent. The Holy King realm domain suddenly condensed into a small-scale storm that enveloped Lu Zan. Lu Zan's mind was a complete blank. In that instant he almost couldn't control his mind. A powerful pressure came from all around him, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cave. Yes, at this moment he felt as if he had fallen into purgatory and was surrounded by a group of ghosts. That kind of hair-raising, hopeless feeling was not something a normal person could endure. Arg! Lu Zan suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His pupils rapidly enlarged. His entire body was ice-cold as he fell into the snow. His body trembled slightly. He had actually died under the pressure of the domain. Lin Muyu's gaze froze. She hadn't thought that Lu Zan, the leader of a mercenary group, would be so weak that he could actually be scared to death by the illusion brought by the domain's pressure. She really didn't know how this kind of cowardly rat had become a mercenary, or even a leader of a mercenary group. General Lu? Huan of Northern Qi was startled. He hurriedly signaled with his eyes, "Quick, go take a look." A mercenary walked forward and felt Lu Zan's breath. He couldn't help but take a few steps back. His face pale, he said, "Leader, he's already dead." "My God, what happened?" Huan of Northern Qi was dumbfounded. He hurriedly raised his dagger and angrily shouted in a low voice, "Who are you? What despicable method did you use to kill Lu Zan?" Lin Muyu didn't speak. She only looked at him indifferently. Instead, a mercenary to the side whispered in his ear, "Second Master, the leader bled from every orifice and died. I suspect he was poisoned. This kid might be an expert in poisons." Huan of Northern Qi's slightly handsome face instantly twisted. He said, "Poisoned? Bastard, you dared to kill my people. I'll let you have a taste of the heavenly book." As he spoke, Huan of Northern Qi gently flicked his wrist. The inscriptions on the dagger suddenly appeared. A yellow light shot into the sky, and with a whoosh, it lit up the horizon. But just as his low-grade earthly book was activated, a shadow swept past. The entire process of Lin Muyu's stellar sword being unsheathed and sheathed did not take more than half a second. In the blink of an eye, it had already returned to its original position. Huan of Northern Qi was stunned. The next moment he felt a chill on his right wrist. In the next second he felt a sharp pain. His entire wrist had been directly cut off by Lin Muyu's sword. The dagger with the low-grade earthly book had disappeared without a trace. Huan of Northern Qi suddenly knelt on the ground. This young master of an aristocratic family had never been so seriously injured. The pain caused his forehead to be covered in sweat, and he almost fainted. The group of mercenaries and guards stared with their mouths agape. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the mercenaries had run away, and there were not many guards left. No one had clearly seen Lin Muyu's movements, but they knew that it was the guard of Li Jue's family who had acted. Otherwise, Huan of Northern Qi's hand would not have been cut off. "Don't run." Huan of Northern Qi knelt on the ground, his face full of pain. In a loud voice he said, "All mercenaries stop. Kill him. The person who cuts off his head will be rewarded with 1,000,000 Jinyin coins." The group of mercenaries were all bloodthirsty outlaws. Once they heard 1,000,000 they all stopped in their tracks. Lin Muyu played with Huan of Northern Qi's low-grade earthly book embryo dagger. She smiled and said, "If this earthly book is activated, killing someone in the Iha kingdom, it shouldn't be a crime, right? If any of you want to try the power of this low-grade earthly book, then feel free to try. The pain of the wind blade cutting through your body shouldn't be too great, right?" The mercenaries didn't care about 1,000,000. They turned and ran. In the blink of an eye they were all gone, leaving only a few guards standing there with ashen faces. One of the middle-aged guards seemed to be in the first tier of the Earth realm. He could be considered the only decent warrior in the group. Only he had the courage to go forward and help Huan of Northern Qi up. He said, "Second Master, we've run into a tough opponent today. We can only admit defeat. Let's go back to the inn first. We can't stay here." Your wound needs to be bandaged. Huan of Northern Qi struggled with all his might. No, Uncle Zhang, I still have an earthly book embryo. I want to kill this bastard who ruined my hand. There's still a weapon embryo? Lin Muyu's gaze swept over and found that there was an exquisite dimensional bag on Huan of Northern Qi's waist. It must be in this dimensional bag. Thus, Lin Muyu leaped forward and opened her hand to grab the dimensional bag. Don't go too far, the guard called. Uncle Zhang suddenly swept his fist over. His fist was full of power. This person's martial arts cultivation was indeed not bad. Unfortunately, his opponent was Lin Muyu, a warrior in the Holy King realm. Her 5 fingers suddenly turned into a palm. Lin Muyu used her strength lightly and, relying only on the strength of her body, forcefully slapped Uncle Zhang's fist. With a bang, the Jinshi whirlpool surged. Uncle Zhang took a step back. Lin Muyu took advantage of the situation to grab the dimensional bag on Huan of Northern Qi's waist and forcefully took it. She smiled slightly and said, "Thank you, Second Master of Northern Qi, for your reward. This is compensation for killing young Master Li Zua." As she spoke, Lin Muyu turned around and with a few leaps, disappeared into the night. "Don't go." Huan of Northern Qi's face was full of anger and embarrassment as he roared, "Second Master." Uncle Zhang looked at Lin Muyu's back in the distance and said, "Forget it. This person's cultivation is too high. I'm afraid there are no such masters in Bailing City. How is that possible?" Huan of Northern Qi said in shock, "Bailing City is full of talents. There are many masters in the president's manor, and Marshal Ji Yao and Marshal Long Qianlin are also very skilled. Is this kid's cultivation above Ji Yao and Long Qianlin?" Uncle Zhang shook his head. "Commander Ji and Commander Long are only at the heaven realm. This person, I can faintly feel that he held back 90% of his strength. Just now he scared Lu Zan to death. That wasn't because he was scared to death but because he was pressured to death. This person is at least at the sanctuary realm." His voice sounds so young. "How many young sanctuary realm experts are there in Iha Nation? Swift White Province is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Second Master, we've offended someone we shouldn't have. Let's go back and heal." Huan of Northern Qi's face was twisted. He said, "Holy Realm Master, so what? The Northern Qi family is favored by the commander. I will definitely gather people to Swift White Province. If I don't uproot the Li family, I swear I'm not a man. Yes, let's go back and heal." Uncle Zhang's expression was dark and uncertain. His heart was in turmoil. In the short exchange just now, he could feel that his opponent was unfathomable. Furthermore, he felt that the opponent had not used his full strength. Otherwise, his group of people would probably already be corpses. The opponent hadn't even used a single martial art move. This meant that he wanted to hide his identity. Just who was this black-clothed Li family guard? At the back of the inn, the back window of a room on the second floor opened wide. With a swoosh, 2 figures flew into the room. After closing the window, Lin Muyu was about to burst into laughter. She threw Huan of Northern Qi's dimensional bag onto the table and laughed. "This group of idiots, I'm dying of laughter. With their level of cultivation, they're still fighting here. Any random person in the heaven realm would be able to kill them all." Qi Nin, who had been watching the battle, was also smiling and blushing. She said, "Li Zhua's death is not to be regretted. But you, why didn't you kill Huan of Northern Qi just now? Leave this kind of idiot for Iha Kingdom. It's good for us. Besides, we are people who practice martial ethics. If there's no need to kill, we shouldn't kill. Yes, Xiaoyin knows. I can do it too. Let's not talk about this. Let's see what good things are in Huan of Northern Qi's dimensional bag." That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.